Good evening and welcome to tonight's Monday, April 3rd, 2023 City Council meeting. I will first await a motion to leave the non-public and to seal the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Now, Kelly, will you please call the roll and we'll start in on the regular meeting.
Mayor McEachran,
Here.
Assistant Mayor Kelly,
Here.
Councilor Tabor,
Here.
Councilor Denton,
Here.
Councilor Moreau,
Here.
Councilor Bagley,
Here.
Councilor Lombardi,
Here.
Councilor Blaylock, he will be joining us shortly, and Councilor Cook.
Here.
Will you now rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sweet thing.
All right, we have two proclamations. I will be reading one, and the Assistant Mayor will be reading one. Whereas National Volunteer Week was created in the 1940s to pay tribute to those who provided humanitarian services during the Second World War, saw a resurgence in 1974, and led to the creation of National Volunteer Month, recognized worldwide in 1990. And whereas presidents of the United States throughout the years have proclaimed National Volunteer Month to salute the unparalleled services of the volunteers who have given countless hours for the betterment of mankind, our communities, and the American way of life. And whereas, while Volunteer New Hampshire, a nonprofit group, was established in 2000 to promote volunteerism and community service, Portsmouth has created a long-standing culture of volunteerism, achieving unparalleled levels of volunteer service to the arts, education, churches, sports, social services, and some of the most beloved institutions, thanks to the very capable and generous, unflagging support of literally thousands of volunteers who are fundamental to the success of our own nonprofits and their missions. And whereas here in this state, the true New Hampshire advantage is that citizens don't wait for someone else to tackle big problems and big needs. Instead, residents rally to their community and organize grassroots efforts to provide assistance, sometimes until the supply chain of resources can catch up, like the groups who handmade face masks for the most vulnerable when the pandemic hit, and sometimes to the life of a cause the way that Gather has fed hungry families since 1816. And whereas we might take for granted the legions of volunteers who literally burnish the natural and built environments that is the foundation for what we call the quality of life that puts Portsmouth at the top of so many lists of best places to live, work, and play. And whereas the same conviction that is Mary McEachran Keenan said when she dedicated the fountain in Market Square in April 1986, the spirit of volunteerism is the greatest resource of our community. Now, therefore, I, Daglin McEachran, Mayor of the City of Portsmouth, on behalf of the members of the City Council and the citizens of Portsmouth, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire as a Volunteer Appreciation Month, and I urge all citizens to celebrate the essential contributions of citizens, volunteers to the past, present, and future of Portsmouth, given with my hand and the seal of the City of Portsmouth on this third day of April 2023. Thank you. Mary's going to be so bummed looking down that I butchered our own family name on that one.
Your Honor, thank you so much for this opportunity. As I did last year, I asked to read the proclamation for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Myself, a survivor, I think it's very important that we always put a name and a face to pandemics like this. Sexual Assault Awareness Month is so important. And it's important for people in positions like I am today to come forward to try to remove stigma and to help every victim go through the journey of becoming a survivor. Whereas April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, a time that is set aside to raise awareness and draw attention to the prevalence of sexual violence in our state and across the nation. And whereas Haven, the southeastern New Hampshire's confidential support network for anyone impacted by sexual and domestic violence and stalking, reminds us that in New Hampshire, sexual assault is a serious crime, where 1 in 4 women and 1 in 20 men have reported experiencing some form of sexual violence in their lifetime. And whereas we know that every 68 seconds, someone in America is sexually assaulted, and that every 9 minutes, that victim is a child. That 41% of the most recent sexual assaults reported in New Hampshire occur when the victim was 18 or younger, and 83% before they were 25. And 1 out of every 6 American women and 1 out of every 33 American men have been the victim of an attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. And whereas in the state of New Hampshire, just 13 of the 344 sexual assault offenders, 88% of whom were someone the victim knew or were even part of the victim's household, were convicted or pled guilty, while often scarring their victims for life. And whereas, according to the report from the Research Committee of the Governor's Commission on Domestic and Sexual Assault Violence, in conjunction with the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence, New Hampshire lacks a consistent and uniform means of tracking sexual assault cases through our criminal justice system, and supports an awareness campaign so that citizens recognize the realities of sexual assault in our state and are better prepared to advocate for its victims and for its reform. And whereas here in Portsmouth, our social service agencies such as Haven and Operation Blessing, our hospitals and our police department struggle daily trying to help the victims of sexual assault pick up the pieces. And whereas we take this opportunity to remind all that confidential local help is available 24 hours a day at Haven's Violence Prevention Hotline and Support at 603-944-994-SAFE. Now I, Declan McEachran, Mayor of the City of Portsmouth, on behalf of the members of City Council and citizens of Portsmouth, do hereby proclaim April 2023 in Portsmouth as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and call upon the residents to learn more about this problem and to the help available to victims and how to be a part of the solution to end in this tragedy. Given with my hand in the seal of the City of Portsmouth on the 3rd day of April, 2023.
Thank you, Assistant Mayor. Next up, we have the acceptance of minutes, February 6, 2023, February 21st, 2023, March 6, 2023, and March 20th, 2023. I'd wait a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, next up, we have a couple of recognitions. So first, the city received a significant donation from William Bill Mortimer, and just wanted to take a second to call this out, just of the importance behind it and the fact that the generosity that he gave. And Bill came to Portsmouth in 1952, spent 35 years, eventually retiring as a police commander, chief of the detectives, gave more of his time as the police commissioner, where he served 4 years, 2 of them as chair. But this specific amount, and it's nearly $912,000 from his estate, goes towards the Portsmouth Futures program. Goes before the scholarship funds Bill had served on the Portsmouth Future program. This is the scholarship funds that are run through the trustees of the trust funds, and it's a nearly 10% increase in their total operating amount of money. So the fact that even after leaving us, his dedication to Portsmouth, his dedication to the children of Portsmouth should be an example to all of us. And we sometimes disagree on some issues of policy up here. I think we all agree that the future of Portsmouth is in our children, and his contribution and his family's bequest to make sure that the future is brighter for those children. I just want to thank Bill and his family, or the memory of Bill and his family, for that very generous donation. Thank you. Next up, you might see some people that are taller than me here. That's no easy feat, but luckily I am recovering. I had a schedule on my meniscus operation, so there's not going to be any challenges to any pickup games. We're going to remember the past as me being better at basketball than I actually was. But I do want to recognize the achievements of the Great Bay Community College men's basketball team. They had their best season in program history. Let's go Herons. All right. So after making it to the conference finals, they finished the season winning 22 games and then moved on to a national tournament run and into the Final Four of the United States Collegiate Athletic Association. It was a record-breaking year for the Herons. It was the first time qualifying for the Yankee Small College Conference Finals, first time as a national qualifier, and they had the best finish in school history with a 22-9 record. Theodore Wolf was named to the USCAA All-Academic Team. Kingsley Breen was named to the USCAA All-American Second Team, and both were named YSCC All-Conference players. The season continued to produce first in program history for the Herons, as Alex Burt was voted USCAA National Coach of the Year. So we have tonight Cheryl Lesser, the president of Great Bay Community College, Alex Burt, the head coach, Brian Scott, I didn't meet Brian, but he's here as well, the athletic director, and then we have basically the whole team. Is this the whole team that's here? You guys are just a, as a former athlete that realizes hand coordination required him to be in a boat instead of a basketball court, but no less appreciate the dedication, the sacrifice it makes to be there for your teammates and to perform under pressure. I think that you guys are a fantastic representation of sports here in Portsmouth. I also selfishly want to highlight you because you are a fantastic representation of Great Bay Community College, which, while it's on the trade port, it is still Portsmouth. And so being able to highlight that for all in attendance tonight and watching at home is incredibly important. Hopefully we'll get out to more games, and you're going to have a few more Herons fans after this. So would like to invite you to, if there's somebody that would like to say a few words, and then we'd love to grab a picture with you in front of the podium.
Well,
Cheryl and Alex?
I can't say it any better than what you said. The college is so proud of these young men. They did a history-making event like no other for us, especially after coming out of the pandemic and just rallying around the college. We had people from all over the college come and watch together. It was just a glorious moment for us and very important for the whole college. You all are role models for everybody at that school of what you can achieve by working together, and I just want to say thank you, and I want to introduce our Coach of the Year here.
To be honest with you, I'm just fortunate to coach such a special group of guys. This group right here really saw and achieved the value of, strengthening the bond amongst one another. That goes for on the floor and off the floor. And when you kind of see that level of cohesion grow and develop and that level of buy-in really come into play, that ultimately surfaces to ultimately the 22 wins. It surfaces to ultimately the Final Four run. And it's stuff that happens more or less behind the scenes. But other than that, we're just thankful to be here. We're happy to be here. The support, the love we've definitely felt throughout our local community and from our college as a whole. So we're just, thank you guys.
Thank you, Alex. So why don't you guys come up? I see Sean Clancy in the back there, economic developer we poached from, or maybe that's not the legal term, but Great Bay Community College. But the guy has been beaming from ear to ear about you guys, so come on up, guys. Just right in front of the podium.
Stand right here.
Congratulations. Tell us.
They won't get up with you. Yes.
Come on, Mayor, you're still tall. Finally, he's found his peers.
Works for me to figure it out.
Definitely
I
not
know
this
your mother as well.
There's no being in the background.
No, I know, huh? No, Kate, she'd be short.
Usually easy to see the mayor, but not true.
Good job, guys. Good job, guys.
Stay up here where I'm
Grab
talking.
those boards, guys.
Definitely a couple taller than you.
Yeah. The mayor is finally amongst his peers in height.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. We'll
Thank
just
you.
give a couple minutes. All right. As we wait for the Herons to leave the building, we'll move on to public comment session. First up, Irish Mike on the topic of children's safety.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Michael Harn, Portsmouth. Right now in America, you got the president, the governors, Congress people, and people of power all calling for gun control. But meanwhile, they're protected by automatic weapons with more rounds of that of the Tennessee shooter. I can walk down the street here to the courthouse, most state houses, airports, or sports arenas. Before I go in, I have to go through a metal detector, and each building is protected by armed security or police officers. But I can walk into just about any school in America, and all we got protecting our future leaders of this country is a nice framed poster saying this is a gun-free zone. As adults, we need to do better. In the news, you heard about the Tennessee shooting and the 6 people that lost their lives. But what the media won't tell you is why only 6 people lost their lives. They had a detailed evacuation plan and a highly trained response team. Schools are generally targeted because they're soft targets, and each There's hundreds of mass shootings in America each year, but generally we only hear about school shootings because it's easier to push idiotic logic by covering school shootings in an attempt to ban AR-47s or AR-15s. But in actual fact, most of the school shootings that happen have been done with handguns. From 82 to 2023, out of 111 different school shootings, 161 different handguns have been used. The most deadliest school shooting in U.S. history, the Virginia Tech shooting, where 32 people lost their lives and 17 people were injured, was done with handguns. We as adults and future leaders need to do better. Right now in America, there's over 400 million guns. What's easier, to ban 400 million guns or make our schools hard targets? We should have metal detectors at entrances, double doors with call buttons that can be activated from each classroom, and detailed evacuation plans. And in closing, all I'll say, prayers aren't enough, but I pray every day. We all lose if there's no respect. We only move forward by laying down our sword of words and being with one another as humans, and reminding ourselves the responsibility of being human is that we're one human among billions of humans on this planet.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Sue Sterry on the topic of flash vote.
Hi, Sue Sterry, Broad Street, Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and the first thing I thought of was Flashdance, but when I saw it online today. But seriously, the first thing that came to my question was who will be overseeing this program and what safeguards are in place? And then the third question was how much of an influence is this going to have on decisions made by, it wasn't just clear whether it was just city council or it might influence the zoning board or what have you. So with such little information, I just felt like there was a lot of red flags that could possibly be part of this program. How will the city know that the people that sign up are residents of Portsmouth? And then going further, how in today's internet world where people can do just about anything, how will we know that there isn't a voting block out there where somebody has a political issue and designs a group of people that will influence what's going to happen in the city, whether it's good or bad? So I just have a lot of questions, and that I hope that in the future there'll be more information out there for the public or on the city website. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Next up is Dave Crosgrove, and Amy as well. Are you guys want to speak together or just one after another? Okay, is it going to be 3 minutes? Okay, for the both of you, or okay. All right, Amy May and Dave Cosgrove on skateboard park bond authorization.
I'll speak quickly then. Good evening, Mayor, council members, city staff. Amy and I are here to speak on behalf of the Skate Park Committee. We understand that the city recently received contractor bids for work to be performed related to ultimately delivering the Portsmouth Skate Park to our community. Each bid submitted contains line items for activities such as site prep, earthwork, paving, drainage, et cetera, as well as what are called bid alternates. The committee would like to acknowledge all of the hard work that went into putting this work out to bid, as well as the evaluation of the bids received. We're grateful that this council and the city have moved swiftly yet very carefully throughout this entire project's process and fully supported this critical public recreation facility. Due to multiple factors, it is our understanding that additional bond authorization will likely be required to complete funding of this project. It's the committee's understanding that this need for authorization stems from site remediation work required, as well as macroeconomic factors outside of anyone's control. As you all know, no project is immune to such economic pressures. Furthermore, with respect to additional site remediation, invariably issues surface that can't be foreseen until the project is underway. I'd just like to pause quickly to reflect on the fact that we were able to repurpose an irregular parcel shape, repurpose that for the skate park project without having to spend money, taxpayer dollars, to go out and find a site for this particular skate park facility. So we're able to utilize existing land. In the end, this site will be successful for a number of reasons we've presented in past meetings, including its proximity to the rail trail that will only become more vital to our community over time. So the committee's here tonight, Amy and I, as well as the vast majority of the committee is here behind me, to fully support whatever the city staff's ask is of the council going forward. So we thank you. With that, I'd like to return quickly to something I spoke about earlier, bid alternates. The bid alternate items that are listed are specifically for lighting of the parking lot, lighting of the skate park, as well as the shade structure. We want to be clear, the skate park feels very strongly that the highest priority should be the lighting of the lot and the skate park itself, primarily due to safety reasons. It's not to say that the shade structure isn't also needed, but we just feel that the lighting is more critical. While a shading structure of some sort is certainly needed, it can be addressed with a smaller, less expensive solution to be determined. The price tag for what the design called for seems excessive for our needs and costs significantly more than it would take to actually light the park and the parking lot. So we ask that the council please take that feedback into our consideration. I apologize for
Thank you, Dave. I knew that would happen.
Sorry.
All right, let's just reset the timer for Amy.
You have.
So as you know, we have been organizing and executing community outreach events, bringing together skateboarders, artists, musicians, and local business owners to fundraise for the skate park lights. we've raised $26,417.33 to date and are currently planning a skateboard festival and a brick fundraiser. We hope that this will double what we currently have, and we'd like to ask that you consider the bid alternates, specifically the lights, minus what we realistically think that we can raise, along with the updated costs that you'll hear about in the bids. Back in December of 2021, when this project was approved, in order to show the Portsmouth community's dedication and excitement about this project, we set out to fundraise for the lighting. At this time, there was an initial number of $75,000 for lights that was thrown around. You'll see that it's a lot more than that, and this seemed attainable. Lights are essential to the usability of the park and, more importantly, the safety. As a woman and a mother, I know that lit spaces are safer spaces on so many levels. Late fall and early spring bring us shorter days. We want our community to have optimal and safe usability. And if you have been following any social media pages of other New England skate parks, you will see that skateboarders and other riders of skate parks will actually shovel out a skate park during the winter and use it, which will make lights needed even in late afternoons, 4 p.m. So before I step away, I just also want you to know that we will continue to show our dedication as a committee even after this skate park is built. We've come to realize that where we shine is community outreach, and many of us plan to continue to be stewards of the skate park, watching over it, making sure that those in need of proper equipment get it, planning events, and so on. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, May. Next up, Rich DiPentima on train safety. Oh, got extracurriculars. All right.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, City Manager Kennard. Rich DiPentima, 16 Dunham Way in Portsmouth. There has been a great deal of concern recently regarding rail safety as a result of the serious accidents that took place in Ohio, Minnesota, and North Dakota. Fortunately, those were in pretty rural areas. This is not a new or a rare phenomenon. The Federal Railroad Administration reported 1,164 train derailments in 2022. That's 3 per day in the United States. As you know, almost every day, trains carrying various hazardous materials such as propane, gasoline, and others pass through Portsmouth on a daily basis. As you can see on the map that I've given you, the trains pass through some very compacted areas, including areas such as the hospital, large housing areas, development, schools, hotels, and many businesses and entertainment facilities. I can't read my own writing anymore. In the event of a serious accident in Portsmouth involving a hazardous material, there might be a requirement to evacuate up to a 1 mile radius from the site of the accident. This is a serious concern, considering the amount of congestion we have and the potentially during a summer event having to evacuate a mile radius from the city of Portsmouth. You can see where that train might potentially land. In the event that this has happened, do we have a viable plan in place that would be able to evacuate the necessary area within a 1 mile radius? Do we have all the plans? Has it been updated to reflect all the new development that's taken place, particularly in the north end of Portsmouth and the area around the West End Yards, where we have a large complex of apartments and condominiums? This is a serious, serious issue. The one problem I really have a concern about is the new development that's taking place in the parking lot of the Sheraton Hotel. There's already a building on the other side, on one side of the tracks from that parking lot. There's a approved plan to build 3 buildings on the other side of that on the parking lot, in the Sheraton parking lot. When the train comes through there, when that is built, that will be a canyon built by 2 buildings on either side of the tracks. The train will have to go through that canyon on those sides of the tracks And if accident were to happen in that area, there was almost no room for any emergency vehicles to approach or get to the train, to right it, to fix it, and to deal with an emergency situation. That is a catastrophe waiting to happen. So I urge the city council to work, and I already spoke to the fire chief before this meeting, to make sure our plans are up to date. There's nothing we can do about the railroad. That's a fact of life. We have to live with the railroad. But we have a responsibility to make sure that the plans we have in place are adequate and can respond to protect the public as necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Next up, Liza Hewitt on the ADU public hearing.
Good evening, Liza Hewitt, 726 Middle Road. I'd like to know why the public hearing on ADUs is being derailed. When there was public hearing notice in the newspaper stating there would be a public hearing this evening on the ADUs. I'd like to know why the public hearing process is not being followed. Mayor McEachern, at the last meeting, you said that there would be the second and third reading this evening on the ADUs. And Councilor Bagley said that he had some changes that he would like to see, and you asked him to please include those changes that he would like in the packet for tonight. I'd like to know why there's a need for a work session, as there is a motion apparently in the packet suggesting that instead of the public hearing, there be a work session. I would like to remind you that there were probably 75 plus people involved over a year's time in the changes that are being proposed to the ADU ordinance. A $50,000 consultant was paid by the city to help with that process. There was approximately a year's worth of land use committee meetings. There were 2 planning board meetings where presentations were made, and I'd like to know why there was a first reading if there still needs to be a work session. Something's not right, and once again, I'd just like some transparency. If the motion passes for a work session next Monday, I strongly request that you include the planning board at that work session, as they have been very involved in this process. If Mr. Bagley has changes that he would like to see to the proposed changes that have already gone before the planning board, the land use committee, and the public, I would like to see those changes included in the packet before that meeting for work session. And finally, I would hope that any work session will include the public, and public comment time will be available for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Liza. Next up, Peter Huda on ADUs and community power.
Good evening, Peter Huda, 280 South Street. First, I'd like to talk to you about number B in public hearing. Same thing that Ms. Hewitt addressed. And I guess I'd like some clarifications. I have some questions. If you could please clarify what actually it means that's in the motion to have the legal department report back regarding the amendments. Now, I've been to most of the meetings. We went through this over and over again. And I guess I'd like to know what exactly the changes are. When this was discussed in the last meeting, I specifically remember the mayor asking for the changes to just come forward. In going over this, the changes are rolled into here again. So what you have to do if you want to figure out what the changes are is go from the last one to this one. Very cumbersome, especially after doing this about 10 times. In the last maybe 10 months, Ms. Moreau created a new land use board. This actually was one of the longest running subjects that was in there. We went over it and went through all of the changes. So I would like to know why at this time, after you have posted something in the paper, why we are having to put amendments on here now. Next thing I'd like to ask on the community power. The data security agreement that this council has approved last time to give individual consent for their data. So first question is, has the EAP been adopted? Councilor Tabor. The next question is, when will you start the process to get customer individual consent to release their data? RSA 53E7 actually says you need written consent. So from a person who has dealt with individual security issues and data problems before, I'm very concerned about this, and I'm very concerned that this process will be followed as described in 53E. And I urge you, before the contract is signed, please review this and secure our data. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra. Next up, Jim Hewitt on Workforce Housing Covenant.
Good evening. Jim Hewitt, 726 Middle Road. Over the weekend, I sent all of you a markup copy of the covenant that's being proposed at Southgate Plaza for the 95 condos. And I wanted to highlight some of the mistakes I found before you vote on it tonight. The first one is, on the first page, it's the fourth whereas. It talks about what happened on March 21st in 2019. That event had nothing to do with this project. That related to West End Yards, where they voted to decrease the number of units from 50 to 25 and increase the AMI from 60 to 80%. So what happened there was the rent went up from $1,500.72 to $2,013. The second item is on the second page on the definition of affordable. The ordinance and state law says affordable should be 60% the average median income, and as proposed, it's going to be 100%. So that changes the income from $62,000 to over $100,000. So I hope this is not approved, because I don't think that's affordable. The third item has to do with allowing the project to have a 50-year term. Our ordinance doesn't allow a time frame for the workforce housing component. And lastly, the planning board never approved this covenant. I think that was indicated to the council. We never voted on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next up is Esther Kennedy on ADUs, and don't have the second one, sorry.
That's right.
Housing.
Esther Kennedy, 41 Pickering Ave. First of all, I want to support Amy and Dave. Let's get this skateboard park done. Let's get the lighting in so everyone's safe. It's pretty simple. Let's do it. We've been at it for a long time. Mr. Rice and I have been at it for over 20 plus years, and so let's get that completed. Let's vote for it and move forward. The second thing is I want to talk about ADUs. There have been hundreds of meetings. You have council members who have spent hours on this. You've had 2 planning board meetings. If a counselor has a problem, show up. I know 30, 40 people have shown up. Citizens have shown up. Why are we changing it? Now, I don't agree with everything you're moving forward for the second reading, but at least I had a process. And so what you're going to make all that time, city officials' time, poor Councilor Moreau's time, all the time, you're going to say, we're going to have one meeting and make a decision. That is wrong. And I don't know if that's Councilor Bagley, because I know he brought it up last week, but that is just downright wrong. The mayor has asked for you to present a motion. I rewatched the video of your concerns, and we haven't gotten it. So please, please tonight, vote to move forward with the public hearing. Let's look at the ADUs as they are represented, as Ms. Moreau's committee has done, as the planning board has, and let's move forward. And if you want to make changes down the road after you've worked it through and worked the kinks out, then bring it back. But people have spent hours on that. And it's just wrong to have one meeting on a Monday night and change everything. Lastly, I would like to agree with Mr. Hewitt, and I want to thank him for coming forward and presenting the concerns. I think that's a good Budget Committee member who's bringing forward some things that are in that you might not have taken an understanding to. I know as a city councilor, sometimes with all the stuff we get in our packets, we don't quite get all the information. So I want to thank him for coming forward. But if we are moving something from 60 to 100%, we are changing our views on affordable housing. And you as a council ran on it. So I think you should really look at those zoning and look at those amendments and look at some of the things that the city manager is bringing forward for changes. And maybe you want to send it back to the planning board for another look at it. That would be the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Next up, Paige Trace. As always, the topic of Portsmouth.
As always, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Paige Trace, 27 Hancock Street. I'd like to congratulate the Water and Sewer Departments for being awarded a $35 million SAG grant. It's been awarded to pay the city's principal and interest payments for 30 years for the Pierce Island Wastewater Treatment Facility. I have a few questions, though. I know you're not going to tell me this was part of the original plan. So how much will this incredibly generous grant affect the residents' water and sewer bills? Please, by what percentage will this grant of $35 million decrease our bills? I'd also like to thank the city manager and Attorney Morrell for including Attorney Morrell's recent comments on McIntyre on the city website. Thank you. Even though we are where we are, I'll still ask you for the most recent draft of the physical plan. I'll also ask you to post the settlement agreement in total with all exhibits. Maybe you could even post the draft financial pro forma. Don't the residents of Portsmouth own these documents? Transparency. This is a concept where all of you seem to have a little bit of difficulty. In your haste to act in the dark with McIntyre, you ran so fast without looking you tripped over your own feet. Moving in stealth in the darkness likely cost you the McIntyre building. It could be for the people of Portsmouth, though, that it's a good thing. We'll wait. Regardless, you own this. Please read any future documents carefully before you sign them. You'll own those also. Maybe you should ask, or you could ask, the GSA to find a suitor for the McIntyre property who won't sue you. This is no longer what's best for others. This is what's best for Portsmouth. It appears you own this now, not the building, just the problem. Please proceed with caution. We wish you the best moving forward. It won't be easy, but you'll make it through this. And I'd personally like to say to each and every one of you that having been once where you are sitting and knowing that the McIntyre is a multi-council issue, I do honestly, truly wish you the best of luck. It won't be easy, but I somehow know with the mayor that you have, you'll get through it. So please just tread cautiously. Thank you.
Thank you, Paige. Next up, Francis Cormier on what does democracy look like?
Francis Cormier, Melbourne Street, Portsmouth. Before I came in, I was out in the parking lot, and I was looking at some of the debris from the Twin Towers, and I began thinking, when they hit the first Twin Tower, we retreated into a state of denial. Denial is a mental reflex by which we try to protect ourselves from a truth that's not comfortable. I grew up in the 1960s, and it was in 1963 that the first Twin Tower was hit. And the first Twin Tower was John F. Kennedy. And we retreated into a comfort zone of denial. And we said, well, everything will be okay. After all, Oswald had problems, and Jack Ruby had problems. But then the second tower was hit. The second tower was Bobby Kennedy. And people finally began to wake up that something was wrong. And we came out of our comfort zone of denial. We began to ask ourselves, are we even a democracy anymore? When the deep state starts assassinating political opponents, that's not what democracy looks like. So we stepped up security, and today, the deep state is not resorting to assassinations. There's too much security. So instead, they're resorting to political imprisonment. When you imprison people because they're your political opponent, that's not what democracy looks like. Yeah, I know. Trump's a jerk. I know that. A surprise. I'm a jerk too. And you know something? We're all jerks. That's why Jesus could say, let him who is without sin cast the first stone. And nobody could cast the stone. This is Holy Week. And I'll guarantee you, all the government buildings will be closed except the fire department and the police. They'll all be closed on Easter Sunday because of what Jesus did during Holy Week, the Passover lamb. And the Passover lamb is another name for Jesus Christ. This is Holy Week. Happy Holy Week, everybody.
Thank you, Francis.
Tell someone you love them and bless them.
That is all for the speakers that we have in session. I'll go to the raised hands, and we have Julia Sinelnikova. Julia, could you state your name and city of residence?
Hello, my name is Julia Sinelnikova, and I'm based in New York City. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
I worked with the city in good faith for no compensation for approximately half a year, sharing my intellectual property with the Portsmouth, New Hampshire 400 Sculpture Committee run by Ernie Greensdale for Bohenko Gateway Park Sculpture Garden. The finalist design that has been posted in local media and City Hall press releases is too similar to my finalist drawing and existing portfolio to be considered for public funding. The selected artist Sijie Chen, was informed of my participation in late fall or winter 2022 and would have had time to see my existing public artworks in the same shapes before submitting the finalist design. The selected artist also shows several works in her online portfolio, which appear to plagiarize my previously published artworks. When I attempted to open dialogue about these problems with the committee to the city council and the mayor, I was ignored and rebuffed for the past month. The city's first response to my inquiry at the beginning of March is a violation of my rights and is causing material damages to myself and my studio staff. When I inquired about the similarity in the images at the start of March, I was responded to by the city's lawyer, Suzanne Woodward, to my shock. She stated that she had directly shared my personal information with the selected artist, Sajia Chen, in her email, and also stated that the city did not have to respond to my inquiry. I am demanding that the city and the selected artist, Sajia Chen, remove the plagiarized image from websites and press releases immediately. Every day of this public abuse of my intellectual property, my studio staff, and my character will count towards the accrued damages from this horrible incident. It is unethical and dishonorable for an artist or a city to want to be known for an artwork that appears plagiarized in an untransparent selection process. The city should complete an investigation in this regard. Most national RFPs of this scale offer a $2,000 finalist fee, which was clearly in the originally announced budget. The committee changed their budget terms during the artist review process after submissions were received. The original RFP states the total budget is $200,000. In my video meeting with 7 committee members in December 2022, I pitched $80,000 for my original design, and they asked how I could make it cheaper. The announcement for Chen's funding states $100,000. Any art historically and legally informed committee would notice previously plagiarized works in 2 fellow competing artist portfolios and not advance the finalist who exhibits plagiarism. The mayor was informed by me of these issues via Twitter messages weeks ago. An elected official in Portsmouth who I have previously met has both spoken to the mayor 1.5 weeks ago and submitted a letter to the city council on my behalf. I am a disabled queer first-generation immigrant, younger and less resourced than the selected artist, for my intellectual property and time to be taken advantage of by a city which legally threatens me after I've provided free labor is unheard of. When I wrote to the city council, Richard Blaylock wrote, "Good evening, Julia. We look forward to you contributing positively to our community. All the best," and refused to engage in any dialogue about my issue or confirmed that he forwarded the communications to the councilors. In conclusion, this is just not cool. I've had enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. That is all the speakers that we have for public comment. Let's see what is next.
Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to suspend the rules and bring up item 13C under the city manager's items, under presentations and written communication.
That is the letter from Julia Sinil-Nikovic.
Yes, if I get a second. Oh.
Second?
Since we just,
Oh, we'll need to vote
Yes.
on that. So the question is to take out of order, suspend the rules, and to bring up 13C. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Floor is yours, Councilor. Well, actually, the floor is just, it's the presentation, but you want to bring it up. So.
thank you, Your Honor. Since we just heard from Julia Sinel-Nikova, and she made an accusation against someone, I think it's only reasonable to allow the organization that actually went through the process of choosing the artist to respond. And with that, if it's amenable to the council, I'd like to again suspend the rules and invite up Valerie Rochon from the Portsmouth 400, New Hampshire 400, to speak to the council.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you so much, Councilor Cook, for bringing that forward, and to the council for allowing me to speak in response to Ms. Sinel-Nikova's, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that, accusations. So, Mayor McEachern, City Council members, City Manager Conard, I'd like to speak on behalf of Portsmouth NH 400th. It is the organization working with the city to plan, create, manage, and market the many programs and events scheduled to celebrate the 400th anniversary of the European settlement of Portsmouth while honoring those who came before us. We created 7 themed pillar teams with over 100 volunteers to accomplish these goals. Our legacy pillar formed a dedicated team who worked with the city to create a sculpture garden in Bohenko Gateway Park based on input from the community, with the first sculpture commemorating the 400th anniversary. The Legacy team sent out an RFP requesting proposals for a maritime-themed sculpture concept in August of 2022 with a deadline of late September. While the team focused on sharing this RFP regionally, there was interest in this project from all over the world, a reflection of Portsmouth's worldwide influence and its reputation as the city of the open door. The review team included the chief curator of Strawberry Bank Museum, a local artist, a past Portsmouth City Economic Development Manager, a former city trust attorney, a UNH professor and member of the NH State Council of the Arts, a DPW advisor, and was chaired by a member of the Legacy team. The review team carefully reviewed all 47 proposals submitted by 35 artists and evaluated them based on the criteria outlined in the RFP. It was a rigorous process. At no time were these proposals shared with other artists or made public. 7 artists were interviewed and were asked for additional information. Sijia Chen was the artist selected. Ms. Chen's concept rose to the top in all categories. Team members were unanimous in selecting her concept based on its iconic quality, connection to the maritime and anniversary theme, her connection to the similarity of her village in Shantou, China, to Portsmouth, and adherence to the materials and maintenance specifications advised by the city. The tipping point for choosing Ms. Chen's design was the community engagement process to solicit Portsmouth themes for the paper cut designs. This paper cut process can be seen in many of Ms. Chen's prior works, as it is based on her and her father's heritage. Julia Sinelnikova, and again I apologize, was one of the 7 artists interviewed. She alleges that Ms. Chen has plagiarized the concept. Because none of the proposals were shared, it would have been impossible for Ms. Chen to know what Julia had submitted. Ms. Chen's design is unique to Portsmouth, though she has used her paper cutting concept in prior installations. Julia's submission was a replication of some of her previously installed work. We are confident in our selection of Ms. Chen's project. She spent a week in Portsmouth in March launching the community engagement process, working with students, arts organizations, historical groups, and many nonprofits to learn more about Portsmouth's history. She held paper cutting workshops with students and spent an evening teaching an enthralled gathering of community members how the paper cut process works. We're excited about this lasting memory of our 400th anniversary celebration and look forward to working with Ms. Chen for its completion in 2023. One thing I'd like to add, I know that you have this statement in front of you. One thing I'd like to add is that Julia seems to think that this is funded by our taxpayers. It is not. It's the cost to do this is approximately $125,000, perhaps a little bit more. It's funded almost entirely by sponsors, except for $21,000 that came from the city's trust, which was funded by funds not used in other development projects for the 1% for art. So other than that, it's been total sponsorship. So there is nothing that's coming right now out of taxpayer dollars. And if you will indulge me with one more statement, I am not speaking for the artist, but I did agree to read her statement, if you will let me read that. Dear Mayor McEachern and Portsmouth City Council members, I, along with Julia Sinelnikova, submitted proposals for the Bohenko Park Sculpture Project. The selection committee conducted a fair and thorough selection process, and I was honored and humbled that they chose my concept, Endeavor. Afterwards, though, Julia contacted multiple parties claiming I plagiarized her work. These claims are untrue and deeply hurtful. I did not and would never plagiarize another artist's work. And to have been accused of such a terrible act has been the most painful thing I've experienced as an artist. I created Endeavor based on Portsmouth's maritime history and culture, which I researched extensively. I am proud that the sculpture incorporates paper cut, an art form from my personal heritage. You can see my art and my artistic range on my website and on my social media, which I included below. I've also included Julia's website and social media for anyone who would like to compare. I am deeply grateful for the support of the City of Portsmouth, the P&H 400 organization, and the people of Portsmouth as I face these baseless accusations. It's a privilege to be creating a sculpture that embraces the heart and beauty of this incredible community, and I hope when it is done, my art will bring pride and joy to the people of Portsmouth for many, many years. Thank you, Sija Chen. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Valerie, any questions? Seeing none, I'd wait a motion to place on file.
Your Honor.
Oh.
Sorry, if I could just say a few words. I'm not qualified to evaluate art. I don't understand art like many in our great city do. I did see the email. I can't see the comparison between the two artists. They seem to have a very different style. What was selected by the committee, which was made up of a group of volunteers that are highly regarded and respected in our town, I think is clearly the artist who submitted it. And there would be no reason why that group of volunteers would pick an artist that didn't submit the best sculpture for the sculpture garden. So I'm sad that this is happening, but I stand 100% behind the committee and the artist that they chose.
Councilor Bagler, any other comments or questions? I'd wait a motion to place on file.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. All right. Next up is the public hearing and votes on ordinance. Yeah, actually, can we, I'd wait a motion to pull forward the update on the McIntyre.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is the city manager's update. I should have the number. No, it's informational. For the minutes, Kelly, as if you need them. Section 17, item number 1.
Thank you.
Your Honor, let me answer this, and City Attorney Morrill can fill in anything that I might miss. But subsequent to the special meeting we held on Friday afternoon, we had a Zoom conversation with the GSA today at noon, and they shared with us that they would be putting forth formally something in writing, which I'm going to read right now. Karen, good afternoon. I'm following up from our meeting last Friday to provide you with a decision regarding the city's efforts to acquire the Thomas J. McIntyre Federal Building through the Historic Monument Public Benefit Conveyance Program sponsored by the National Park Service. Pursuant to the license agreement executed between GSA and the City of Portsmouth on January 11th, 2023, and due to the city's failure to submit an application to the National Park Service to acquire the property through the Historic Monument Public Benefit Conveyance Program by the established deadline, the GSA will no longer support this conveyance option. The GSA intends to move forward with the disposal of the property through a sale alternative. We look forward to discussing the sale process with you in the coming days. So that is our update, and that's what we know. Anything you want to add, Susan?
Only that the city manager would inquire of a vote from the city council to continue discussing the McIntyre property with the GSA.
So I'd wait a motion to investigate or discuss a negotiated sale with the GSA. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Cook?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to say my comments might be a little bit long, just to prepare you all.
I'll buckle in.
First, I want to preface my comments tonight by noting that I've stayed quiet on this matter since I took office because of litigation filed before I entered office. After entering office, that litigation and ongoing contract negotiation, which are matters the council handles in non-public, kept me from commenting publicly in order to protect the city and fulfill my duty as a city councilor to do no harm. However, at this point, following a year of contract negotiations that have resulted in a stalemate, I feel it is important to make sure the record is clear. Over the past 15 months, I've listened as residents have made suggestions about what could be done with the McIntyre site once we acquire it, including moving forward with the Binney plan, bulldozing the site, building a park, and most recently engaging local design professionals who have a vested interest in the city. While I appreciate all the effort and thought that has gone into these suggestions, I want to make sure the public understands the situation fully, why those suggestions have not been entertained, and why and how we arrived at this point. When the council entered office in January 2022, we were facing not one, but 2 lawsuits relating to the McIntyre. The Roberts et al. Suit asked that we reverse a decision of the prior council to terminate the contract with Redgate Kane. That contract termination was made in December 2021 by the prior council without following the provisions in the contract to legally terminate it. The second lawsuit from Redgate Kane requested damages in the tens of millions of dollars for terminating the contract. Again, a contract termination without following legal contract provisions. The council settled the first case by taking action on the second case and reversing the prior council decision. Why, you ask? The second case complicated our options. Redgate Kane, in its suit against the city, asked for the court to prevent the city from taking any further action on the McIntyre project, and that request was pending before the judge. Legally, this meant that the city could not talk to the GSA or National Park Service without significantly weakening our case. We could not take any action at all on the McIntyre without being seen as acting contrary to the court process. The GSA had also given the city a short deadline of 2 weeks to speak with them before they proceeded to dispose of the property. This is the reason we did not have all options before us that have been suggested in this chamber, in newspaper editorials, and on social media pages. The council's hands were tied. The decisions made prior to our entering office in 2022 severely limited the council's options. Under the deadline from the GSA, without the ability to even talk to them, the council was left with only 2 options. 1, go to court and let the case play out over several months or years, forever losing the opportunity to acquire the McIntyre property, given the GSA deadline and our inability to talk with them, and also likely losing tens of millions of dollars due to the violation of the contract provisions with Redgate Kane. Or 2, negotiate with Redgate Kane to settle the lawsuit. Again, we did not have the option to choose another partner, open bids, consider other proposals, or even talk to the GSA or National Park Service. Doing so would have been a detriment to us in a pending litigation. We only had 2 defensible options: go to court or settle. As everyone here knows, this council chose to settle the case. Unfortunately, due to the contract termination in December 2021 and the liability that opened us to, our settlement options were not as favorable as I would have hoped. This council followed legal advice and got the best possible deal for the city in order to avoid liability of tens of millions of dollars to city taxpayers. We hoped we could move forward with our development partner on the community plan, which was a much better result than paying out damages that could increase taxes by an amount most taxpayers could not imagine. The settlement agreement also removed any future liability to the city for the actions that were taken in December 2021 or any time prior to the signing of the settlement agreement. It bound us to working with Kane on a proposal to the GSA and National Park Service to build the community plan. It had no stipulations on the GSA or National Park Service because they were not party to the lawsuit. So we not only had to negotiate with Kane, but also with the GSA and National Park Service moving forward. This council has worked hard to fulfill our obligations in the settlement agreement because it is a legal contract. And I'm sad that we did not reach an agreement with our development partner on all necessary provisions to move forward with a proposal to the GSA and National Park Service by our deadline last Friday. Since the GSA and NPS rejected our project, we have lost the ability to acquire the building through the Historic Monuments Program. Again, while I truly appreciate the efforts of our community to continue to make proposals for the McIntyre site, we as a council are not legally in a position to opine on possibilities or move forward now with any proposal without consultation with our outside legal counsel. We do not know whether or not the city will have the future option, any future option at all at the McIntyre site. And I would say an apt phrase for today is the ball is out of our court. Only the GSA can make the call on next steps with the McIntyre site because they own it, not us. We're eagerly waiting their decision on next steps. Thank you.
Councillor Cook, any other comments, questions? Councillor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. And thank you, Councillor Cook, for that synopsis, which I understand you cleared with legal before the meeting. I would just say that I'm not in support of this motion. Unlike a lot of people, I ran for council in spite of the McIntyre instead of because of it. I believe the city's government's role is to provide the best and safest place for our residents. I think we need a very strong emphasis on health and safety, and particularly our youth through education and activities for them. I also have a strong interest in making sure that we have safe streets and reliable infrastructure. I don't feel that this project fits any of those needs. I don't think that it's ever fit any of those needs. And I regret the amount of high-level time that the city staff has had to spend on this. I think it's had a great lost opportunity cost over the past several decades. It's cost the city dearly financially, and I think it's time to let the private sector develop this site.
Thank you, Councillor Bagley. Any other comments? Councillor Moreau.
While I appreciate everything that Councillor Bagley said and agree and appreciate everything Councillor Cook said, I will support the motion. And it's mostly because I feel like the public deserves to at least know if there is a process forward or not, and what that process is, and let them give us the feedback on whether or not we should move forward. So for those reasons, I would support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Moreau. Councillor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll also state that when the city of Portsmouth first tried to acquire this building, they wanted to purchase it. And then the federal government came and said, no, 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 hold on. We have a way for you to get it for $1. Unfortunately, that process has been very painful for all of us. And it's been very long, and now that process has ended. But I think it is only fair to the residents of Portsmouth to ask, what is the process to buy it? What is our options? It's only fair since that was our first idea years ago.
Thank you, Councillor Blaylock. Any other comments? I will support the motion to enable the city manager to meet and discuss negotiated sale potential with the GSA. There are a lot of needs in the city that we have in terms of building, land. I don't think we have a single conversation in the city without talking about land or buildings. But I think before, if we do decide to move or not move towards a negotiated sale, I would like to know what the price would be before we do so, or at least the price that we would offer and be comfortable offering before we do so. So for those reasons, I will support that. And again, I would echo the sentiments that many feel, and I'm sure many in the public feel as well, a disappointment in the inability to procure this building through the national or the public benefit conveyance program. An enormous amount of time went in over many councils, and then you multiply that by the number of residents that were actively involved in this, some for hours, some for days, some for years. And I would agree with Councillor Bagley in terms of the opportunity cost has been heavy, and I don't like dreaming about buildings. So and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this one. So I want to thank everybody for that process, and again reflect my disappointment that we would not been able to support an application, and thus the GSA is no longer supporting the public benefit conveyance process to date. So it seems like we have, well, we'll see. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you, City Manager. Now we're on to Section 10, still on the first page. Hopefully, and what is, so I'm just looking through after this. Okay, so this, just so folks that are sitting in the audience, we have the Cemetery Committee membership. We'll take that one. We'll talk about the ADUs, and then right after that is the skate park. That should make sure that we have all of it. Then we'll take a quick recess. If there's something that's timely in the audience at that recess, just let me know. All right. First up, first reading of ordinance amending Chapter 1, Article 4, Section 1.411, Cemetery Committee membership and term. I'd wait a motion to pass first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading at the April 17th, 2023 City Council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Next up is the public hearing, second reading of ordinance amending Chapter 10, ADU or accessory dwelling unit, Section 10.43, use regulations, Section 10.440, table of uses, residential, mixed residential, business and industrial districts, Section 10.814, accessory dwelling units, Article 5, or Article 11, site development standards, Section 10.1110, off-street parking, Article 15, definitions, Section 10.1530, terms of a general applicability. I'd wait a sample motion to postpone public hearing and second reading and schedule a work session for April 10th, 2023. Further, for report back from legal department regarding amendments to be considered at the City Council meeting of April 17th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
And I would like to, I don't know if Councilor Bagley is going to correct the record. I control the agenda, so I'd like to explain one point on this. Councilor Bagley did have his amendments. There were a ton of them in email format to me in a timely manner, but heard from legal that we need to review the actual amendments to the that were included in first reading further, as well as incorporate any of those. So just want to make sure Councilor Bagley followed what I had asked him to do, and then figuring that there seems to be a lot of discussion on this. And the last time that we had a lot of discussion on any ordinance change didn't go swimmingly. So a work session where we could have the conversation around what was going in without the formalness of that, and then to have legal attempt to craft that back. Now, I've heard from members of the audience and members of the planning board that they'd want to be included in this work session. I can imagine having the chair there. I don't know how we would get 24 or how is it 18 people there, but I would happy to extend the invitation to the chair of the planning board to be a part of those conversations, as well as make sure that everyone knows public comment will be available at the end of that work session. I'm going to schedule, based on all the work that I saw everybody do, I'm going to pretty much hold the rest of my evening, hopefully not into early morning, but look forward to hearing this with the understanding that, at least from my perspective, the Land Use Committee, as well as the Planning Board, did a lot of work to get us to good on this. And so that's where I'm going into this, but I think it's worthy to have the conversation, especially since we need legal review on the document itself. So should have passed the gavel on that. Sorry I didn't, but since it was, I wanted to correct the record with Councilor Bagley. Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you for correcting the record there. I will kind of explain why I did things the way I did. Initially, when the Land Use Committee was meeting, there were 3 council members on there, and in my mind, I always include the mayor, when I'm thinking of council members regards to a quorum. So I thought if I went to the Land Use Committee meetings and gave my input as a resident, I might be violating right to know rules. When I did actually ask the city attorney if that was in fact the case, it was rather late in the game, I think at their last meeting or second to last meeting, and she explained to me that I was incorrect. I could go to those meetings. And it was kind of suggested that maybe the best time to offer my amendments would be, when it came back to council. When the council did approve and sent it to planning board, I expressed at that time that I had some concerns. I thought there were some things we could do. A lot of it is well crafted. I'm committed to making ADUs as easy as possible to build because we've had so few of them built in the city since 2017. I think this is the single best way we can provide affordable housing in our city without affecting the taxpayer. And there was even a newspaper article on some of my suggested changes. As the mayor alluded to, I did send quite a few changes in. I will highlight one of them, which had to do with the interior door, which I didn't think was a reasonable request. That was actually part of the ordinance because it's required by the New Hampshire State RSA. And as people are probably getting sick of me saying, New Hampshire is a Dillon's rule state, not a home rule state. So the council can only do things that the RSAs permit us to do as set and conquered. So one of my requests was immediately off the table, and I imagine legal wants to look at the rest to make sure I didn't make any other similar mistakes.
Thank you, Councilor Bagley. Anything else? Councilor Moreau.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to state that it was, brought to my attention as we were reaching our deadline to get everything on the agenda, that legal did have some questions as to some of the changes that had been made in the process. And so we had a phone call meeting and discussed it and considering their concerns. And we do want to just make sure they wanted to do one last review with the state statute compared to the changes that we made and make sure that they are all within the state statute. So that is what legal is actually attempting to do, to make sure that the changes, especially some of the things around notice and whatnot, we just want to make sure that those are all within the boundaries of what we're allowed to do under the state law. So that is what legal, because I know there were some questions about what is legal looking at. So, and they apologize they hadn't had a chance to take a look at it prior to then, but that they're overwhelmed. There's, as we know, there's been a few things going on in the legal department lately. So we talked about it and we saw it because there are so many councilors that have so many questions about this, and we didn't want to take up precious time in a city council meeting. It was our suggestion that we try to, before the next city council meeting, fit in this work session so that we can discuss with the councilors that have a lot of questions and try to work through it so that they can understand the changes, why they were made. And Mayor's already stated, of course, going to have public comment at that time. But I thought if we talk through it that way, that might be a little bit more congenial to be able to do that versus at an actual city council meeting. So that's why I kind of am forcing the issue to try to do it before the 17th so that we can then have a public hearing and hopefully second reading. We'll have back from legal, we'll have our work session, and hopefully everybody will be on the same page to try to move these amendments forward, and we'll see how many changes that are necessary or requested at the work session. That's all.
Councilor Moreau, thank you. Councilor Tabor.
I think it's great we're having a workshop. If you look at our master plan, it mentions ADUs 31 times. It was a very clear policy direction that by enabling ADUs, we can enable density and help solve our acute housing problems. So it's worth the time. The only way that you can really do it right for the long term is to have a good, strong ordinance that enables ADUs with as little friction as possible while protecting neighborhoods. And I think there's work to do on that. It's work the council should do because we're the ultimate policy body. So if we're going to have a policy direction to enable ADUs, we have to get into the detail and the guts of this ordinance, and it's entirely appropriate that we do it in a work session.
Anything else? All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. City manager. Oh, did I say we're going to take a? Oh no! Now we got the skateboard park. All right. City manager.
Thank you. In anticipation of receiving bids, which were received last Friday, we placed in the city manager's comments for this meeting tonight a placeholder, if you will, to say that we would be getting information, and as soon as we get the information, we'd share it with the public. So was a late add to the council packet, but let me run down for everyone's benefit where the bid information now stands. We received 2 bids, both of whose totals exceeded current authorized funding, and we can talk about that a little bit. The bid was structured as a base bid, as has been brought up before, for the skate park, with bid alternate 1 for shade shelter and 2 for lighting. So the low bid is shown in a table that has been summarized to come to a total of $3.295 million. That includes, if the council were to support, both adults and an engineering and contingency amount. The current available funding is $1.881 million, of which $1.805 million is bond authorization and $76,500 in FY22 appropriated funds on hand. So as previously communicated to you all, the anticipated cost was expected to exceed available funding, and additional monies would likely be needed. So in order to proceed with the award of the contract, additional funds, we can confirm they are required. So what we need to do this evening, in an effort to stay in the right cadence with the construction schedule, is for the council tonight to decide which amount to place in the bond resolution for the next meeting, which would be April 17th, which would be the public hearing and hopeful approval of a bond resolution. So with limited amount of time, I know that the council just got this information. Let me try and summarize this. And I also want to add that not only is Peter Rice here, but our project manager for this project, Christine Sproviero, she's here as well. They can both answer questions. But Table 2, Summary of Bid Alternatives, has been shared with you all. And essentially, if you have questions, we can speak to it. And I want to make sure I say this correctly. Essentially, the way it breaks down is the shade shelter is an additional $300,000, and lighting is an additional $180,000. So I'd like to pause there. Happy to answer any questions, talk about logistics, if you will. I thought it would be helpful to understand what additions to the bond would be. And so it would still be a number that could be accommodated under our 10% rule in fiscal years 25 through 27. Beyond that, the debt service projection is that we would go over slightly 10%, but as we always do, we manage that level and keep it under 10%. So in anticipation of that question being asked, I got that information from finance.
Councilor Blaylock had his hand up, being the representative.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, City Manager. The skate park committee, we've worked really hard. We've been working on this project for a while. I mean, we all have. I know the lighting is very important to the committee. The shade structure, not as important. Like it was stated by the chairs, Amy May and Dave Cosgrove, it comes to safety, it comes to usability. I mean, once we go past daylight savings time, the hours that the kids would be able to use the skate park it'd be very minimal. They're getting out of school at 3, 4, and then the sun's going down. And like Amy May said, these kids will shovel off the skate park to use it. I mean, they're that dedicated. But I think it's important that we do this project right. It's not lost on me. I don't want to spend any more money than we need to. But at the same time, I don't want to cut a corner and not have a safe skate park. I mean, I'm wearing this pin. I've been wearing it since it started. I promised I'd wear it till it was completed. So I continue to do that. But I would just advise the council from the skate park committee and all the work we've done that is the opinion of the committee.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Blaylock. And then just to, folks might be, I have the luxury of having the notes of the city manager right next to me. So just for the addition of the over the bid base price plus a shade shelter, $1.2 million. The over the base price plus lighting, $1.08 million. for doing them both is $1.413 million in addition to what has already been fundraised. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I have a question about the 180,000 for the lighting, the overage there. I'm very concerned about lighting because I think that it makes the park safer for women and girls, especially, who are always very concerned about dark spaces. And so in that 180,000, what are the inherent assumptions as far as fundraising goes? Is that assuming we stick with what has already been raised, or is there an assumption that there's more to be raised?
The 180,000 does not include the 26,000 that's been raised. Is that correct? Peter and Christine are nodding, and I forgot to mention Todd Henley, who's been intricately involved as well. So the 180,000 represents the cost of lighting over and above the base. It does not include or contemplate what's been raised.
Okay.
That's a separate pot of money.
Okay, so I would just want to verify that for people at home so that everyone understands. So that's the total cost, additional cost we would need for lighting at the site. And then we also have 26,000 and change that's also been raised.
I would imagine that the total amount raised could offset the bond at the time we go to market, at the time we understand fully the cost of the project.
Thank you.
Councillor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think most of us are aware that costs have gone up dramatically in just about everything, but especially construction. So it's probably not a shock that the costs have gone up. It's maybe a bit of a shock how much they've gone up. I would propose, I won't make the motion yet, but I would think that we should go with the base bid and alternate 2, which would be the skate park plus the lighting. While it would be nice to include the shade structure, I think financially it's just too much to ask for all at once. So I think going the base bid and the alternate structure 2 would be a smart move. If that was what we were to do, I would request that if the finance department had any suggestions regarding those further out years in the BOD schedule and anything they might want to adjust with the CIP, or let us know about future years of the CIP, that might be good to hear at the public hearing. But I will say, there's probably not a lot of projects in Portsmouth that seem to have a huge amount of support, and the skate park is one of those projects that's really kind of unified the community, and people have always been behind it. Of course, with a higher price tag, maybe we lose a little bit of support, but I think we need to move full steam ahead on this project because of what it means to our kids and the tremendous volunteer efforts and the tremendous efforts of the previous council, especially Councillor Kennedy, to bring this to us. I think it's our obligation to see it through.
Thank you, Councillor Bagley. Councillor Tabor.
I would make a motion, Your Honor, that we hold a public hearing on additional bonding for the skate park to include the base bid and alternate 2 in the amount of $1,083,500. Is that correct, City Manager?
That's correct.
Second. Any further discussion?
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry. 1 million.
Of course, Kelly.
Thank you.
I would propose a motion that we hold a public hearing on additional bonding for the skate park consisting of base bid and alternative 2 in the amount of $1,083,500.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that will be at the April 17th meeting in the form of a public hearing. Look forward to seeing the skate park committee members then too, and discussion on that, but thanks again. All right, as promised, we'll take a quick break, a 6-minute recess, and we'll get back to it. Welcome back from our quote 6-minute break there. Seemed a little longer.
Where are we?
Your Honor, if I may.
Councilor Denton.
I motion to suspend the rules to bring forward items 16A and B, which are the approval of grants donations, both involving the fire department.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have the, first, the approval of donations to the fire department from Shirley Van Aken for use at the fire department's discretion of $100. I'd await a motion to approve and accept the donation as presented.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Next up, the acceptance of assistance to firefighters grant in the amount of $333,000, $333,294.54. I'd wait a motion to approve and accept the grant as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And thank you very much.
Thanks, gentlemen. Thank you.
All right, we're back on to the city manager's items, and
Thanks, Mayor. Item number 2 is a license agreement with our farmers market vendor, Seacoast Eat Local. They've been great to work with in year number 1, and they're back looking for a renewed license agreement. And again, it was a pleasure to work with them last year. We look forward to another successful farmers market this year with even more vendors. So we're looking for approval of the license agreement.
I'd wait a motion to authorize the city manager to execute the license agreement as presented, allowing Seacoast Eat Local to operate a farmers market at the municipal complex on Saturdays from May 6, 2023 through November 4th, 2023, and that the city manager is further authorized to negotiate and execute any amendment to the agreement that she deems consistent with its purpose.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Moreau.
I had brought this up a ways back, and I think it was towards the end of the season, so I wanted to bring it up again, was that I thought that we as a city council should make ourselves available. I would say maybe one of us with the city manager on the weekends that she's there, but on the off weekends, maybe 2 of us could schedule to be there to be able to interact with the community and answer questions regarding, the city. And I don't know if we need to make that request through this process.
I can shed some light on that. The market vendor will leave a booth set up, and DPW can set it up every Saturday. The library and I were taking turns, so once a month I would go, once a month the library would go. So there'll be 2 other free weekends per month, if you can.
Okay.
Pick. So we could, I could circulate a calendar.
Okay.
And give you all some dibs and times on when you'd like to.
Yeah, we could do one person with the city manager, one with the library, and go back and forth. Is that okay?
It's fine by me. I don't think we.
He was looking very non-committal.
I think that, I don't know if we need it in the license agreement, but is it currently called out?
It's
in there?
contemplated in the
Is
license
it?
agreement
Wow.
to have this
Look at this.
provision. So.
All right, lawyers. So I stand corrected, but I think that that would be, if we need an amendment to that, I think it would be consistent with our vote here to include the city council along with city manager as appropriate at the farmers market informational booth. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to highlight on Councilor Moreau's comments because not everybody may know, but we do have a wonderful farmers market, and the city manager was there to talk to any and all residents, and I stopped it a few times when she was holding court, if you will. And it's just a great opportunity for citizens in the community that have a question about government or anything city related. There's nobody better in the city to talk to, with maybe the exception of the mayor, than the city manager.
It's definitely better folks than me. All right, so we'll take the vote again. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Great.
Seeing none.
Items 3 through 7 all have a theme, as you'll notice in the agenda, and I'm joined by Assistant City Attorney Trevor McCourt, who can help with any specifics if you have any questions. So I'll take number 3, acceptance of an easement for 170 Union Street. This amounts to a simple request for an access easement to allow for leak detection on the 2 private laterals. And Trevor educated me to the fact that anytime there's a new multifamily property that comes before us in this form or fashion, we try to obtain this type of easement for safety purposes, and that's what this one is before you tonight.
And just for us non-DPW folks, what are leaks on laterals?
That's a great question, and I asked the same question of Trevor. And it's essentially the connection between where the public connection leaves off and the equipment that attaches to the property.
Fair enough. Okay. So this is just an easement to be able to fix that and detect that if there's a leak there.
Correct.
Councilor Moreau?
For the record, at our house one time, there was, someone had not properly shut off the outdoor hose, and they came by and DPW shut it off because they noticed it had been running, so things like that.
Excellent. So, well, I'd wait a motion to authorize the city manager to accept and record an access easement for water services in substantially similar form to the easement deeded from LCSG LLC contained in the agenda packet.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. Item number 4 is acceptance of easements for 160 Court Street. And this is in an effort to formally close out the project. PHA brings this forward, and I want to give a shout out to Vincent Hayes on our staff for helping the legal department in closing things out on behalf of the project. This is a sewer line easement for a new sewer line that runs on the property.
I'd wait a motion to authorize the city manager to accept and record sewer line easements in substantial similar form to the easement deed from Portsmouth Housing Authority contained in the agenda packet.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Number 5 speaks to acceptance of easements for 2454 Lafayette Road, which you will recall is the project that was approved by the planning board on December 30th, 2021, to construct a 5-story structure with 95 condominium units at the former Cinemagic location. This has a lot of material here, and what I'd like to share is that all of this was permissible under the Innovative Land Use Statute. And what this does is allow for the City Council to accept a community space easement and a workforce housing covenant from the developer, the form of which have been approved by both planning and legal. And as is consistent with past practice, the Housing Authority agreed to assist the city as it ensures future compliance with the terms of the workforce housing agreement.
Your Honor.
This is the mayor.
Thank you, Your Honor. City Manager, I do have a question that was raised earlier, too, that the affordable units meet 100% of our median income for 3 people, 3-person household. I guess it's a pretty easy question, is how are we considering that workforce or affordable housing when it's 100% of our median?
I'm going to ask Trevor to come up. Essentially, that the agreement is modified from the default language, which is in our zoning ordinance. However, our zoning ordinance does allow for modifications, which is what the planning board opted to do. Trevor, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. A workforce housing unit is defined in our zoning ordinance as a unit which is affordable to a household with an income of no more than 100% of the median income. That is an upward cap on there, and as the city manager mentioned, the zoning ordinance does give the planning board the ability to modify certain terms within the workforce housing covenant. So they went up to that cap, and kind of in exchange, the part of the deal that they worked out with the developer when this all happened at the planning board meeting, which was in public, the default agreement under the zoning ordinance for our covenant, the default term is for at least 30 years. And in this agreement, it's actually higher than that. It's for at least 50 years. So it's for a longer term, and that's a concession that was agreed to in exchange for that 100% number. So all of that was presented to the planning board. They did it at a public meeting and in accordance with the provisions of the zoning ordinance.
Thank you.
Councilor Morel.
I actually was the planning board member who negotiated for the 50 years. So I thought that was our give and take if we were going to go up in the percentage of median income that we would get. If they're for sale, obviously it doesn't affect the developer, but we get a longer period of time where these units can only be sold within those levels. So that was the reasoning I had behind doing that. And I also have 2 typos, can I point out? In section 3, number B, you have 50, but you forgot the word years. And there's another one of those. On section 6, you have 50 year instead of 50 year. That's all. I'm done.
I personally really struggle, and I understand the give and take that the planning board had to do to get the 50 years. It really is a big swing when you're looking at, as talked about earlier, 60 to 80% to 100% of people who could, of that income level, if they could even afford it. So I guess where I struggle is, to be in layman's terms, does the 20 years matter if the 20%, if the 20% increase on income levels makes it so that people can't afford to purchase them? I really struggle, and I know that we've been talking about this in land use committee and in the council and just citywide, of the give and take that we have with developers, of kind of what we're looking for to try to push as much as we can, because there's no RSA that allows us to mandate affordable housing. So I really struggle. I personally just don't see them as equal exchanges. So I have a really hard time supporting this covenant, not due to anyone's lack of work or effort, just my own kind of belief system of what we're doing, what we're trying to do.
Thank you, System Mayor. Quick question just on, so the planning board had approved this. When we had planning board member Hewitt here today, said the planning board had not approved this. What was he speaking to? The covenant or had not approved the covenant? So can you walk me through how this is with us if the planning board hasn't approved the covenant?
Sure. Well, they approved the use of a covenant as, just like when they approve an easement, which is shown on a plan, the easement deed document is not generally before the planning board at that time. It's the same here. The planning board instructed the applicant, in this case, to work with the planning and legal department to draft a workforce housing covenant that carried out the terms that were presented to it and were negotiated by the planning board. To be brought then to the city council, and that's what they decided. That's what they put in their letter of decision, and that's why we are here today.
Councilor Cook and Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Mayor. So while I also share serious concerns around making sure we have affordable housing within the city, I also have concerns about opening the city up for legal challenges with the council taking action on something that is the purview of the planning board. The planning board is quasi-judicial, was authorized to negotiate this agreement. The planning board reached an agreement, and this is just the execution of that agreement, and the council is just allowing the city to execute it. The council really doesn't have the authority to renegotiate this agreement without, I believe, opening us up to some legal jeopardy, because the council is not the planning board. We're not the board that makes those decisions around land use. We can make decisions around zoning and what our zoning ordinance looks like, but we can't tell the planning board what they should and shouldn't do if it's currently allowable within the zoning ordinance.
Attorney McCourt, would you like to comment on?
Yes, Mayor. If I could just add a little bit to that. The city council, not this city council, but a past city council, provided the planning board with authority to reach this kind of agreement with developers in exchange for development standards. If the council has given that authority already, and then the planning board acted on that authority. And I guess if this council doesn't agree with those terms contained within the zoning ordinance, then I would, you're the city council, I would recommend then just taking a look at those terms in the zoning ordinance and in a forward-looking fashion.
Councillor Bagley.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor, and I will be voting in favor of this, but I think it's a good opportunity to kind of explain what I think is a big question in the community. Like, we often hear about 60% AMI is affordable or workforce housing, and if it's not that and it doesn't have the right number of bedrooms, then it doesn't qualify. Councilor Moreau actually gave me a great education on West End Yards, where everybody says, oh, the ordinance required 20% and they only did it for 10%. If I remember correctly, she said that on the planning board, they worked for almost 2 years with West End Yards, going through all the financials, and basically it boiled down to West End Yards saying, we just can't pencil this out at 20. So your options are, we're just going to build the 4 stories and no affordable housing, or we can do 10% and at least you get 10% affordable housing. It wasn't like a backroom deal. I think there was a lot of work sessions. There was a lot of meetings. We make, or the council sets policy, but that policy is not perfect for every condition. If we require 20%, but market conditions are such that nobody can afford to build, then we don't get any affordable housing. So sometimes there has to be a little bit of a give and take based on what the market conditions are. And that's why we have planning boards and zoning boards and the HGC, so that when we set policy, there's workarounds for when that policy doesn't fit every unique situation. And in a city like Portsmouth, where every parcel is completely unique, pretty much every building situation is unique. So we always need this give and take. So why I would love to see us approving this for 100 years at 60%, I understand that that's not feasible. And, sometimes we have to negotiate and take what we can get. And if there's one thing I've learned on the council is if everybody walks away a little bit upset with a solution, then you're probably on the right solution. So I'll be voting in favor of this.
Councillor Dutton.
Question for you, Trevor. Sir. The up to 100% language, that's not something new which was added in. That was what was discussed years ago by a prior council, correct?
That's right, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Tabor.
So what I hear you saying, Trevor, is the ordinance that we have that says for apartments, workforce housing is 60% of the median income. That ordinance is permissible to go up to 100%.
So, Councilor, there is a distinction in the ordinance between apartments and condominiums. Apartments has that 60% number you're referring to, but these are to be sold as condominiums individually, which is why that the ordinance allows for the higher AMI for the sale of the units. But if, like in West End Yards, for example, that is apartments, so they have a lower AMI cap.
Okay, so information that we got that the Cinemagic project is going to be apartments is incorrect. These are going to be condos.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And, I can see why there may have been some confusion on that point, because it does talk about tenants, and of course, it is certainly permissible to rent out a condominium, and that's sort of that eventuality that we were trying to anticipate.
Right. So our ordinance is very clear that affordable for condominiums is up to 100% of median income.
That's right.
Which gives the planning board the authority to do what they did.
That's right.
Okay, thanks.
Just a technical question. Will these, if these are owned, can they be rented and as owned as condominiums? Can they be rented at a price that's separate, or a rent that's separate and not I guess if somebody buys these as 100%, because they rent them out at they qualify as 100%, if they were to rent them, would they still or be restricted in terms of the AMI?
Yes, the tenants would also be subject to that 100% AMI number. All the tenants, everyone living in the property in the project for the duration of the 50 years, that'll be audited annually by Portsmouth Housing Authority to ensure that everybody living in that property meets these requirements in the covenant, which is the same arrangement at West End Yards.
Councilor Moreau.
I'd just like to add that we were able to get the full 20% of units in this project, which we weren't able to get in the rental units at West End Yards. So that was, in my mind, we finally sort of much closer to what we were looking for in this project. So I think it's a win for the city, as we fought very hard to get a lot of workforce housing and private development.
Councilor Bagley?
Just one more comment, and I know technically when we talk about this, we always say units. But what I try to think in my head when we're talking about this, these are homes. These are places where people in our community get to live. So, when we say units, it sounds a little bit impersonal, but this is where our friends and neighbors are going to live and make their home. So anything we can do to provide homes for people in our community, I think we really need to do, even if it's not as perfect as we'd like it to be.
Thank you, Councilor Bagley. Attorney McCourt, if we were to vote this down, what are the next steps that the city would face with us? And let me try to paint the picture. Previous city council set a policy where 100% of AMI was allowed for condominiums. The planning board implemented that policy in order to get an increased number of units under that as part of their construction plan, imagining some loans. And also, we increased the duration of that from 30 years to 50 years. That covenant was not accepted or negotiated by the planning board, but negotiated in the deal, and this covenant comes to the City Council of Falls. If we do not support this covenant, where does the city find themselves at that moment?
Well, if you were to not approve this covenant, I would just recommend at least that you provide specific reasons for doing so. Hopefully those reasons would not be contrary to what the planning board has already said. Perhaps there's something else in the covenant that you might find that could be amended in negotiation with the developer. Absent that, I don't know of any situation where a municipality has taken the path that you have laid out, and certainly the city would be facing, I think, a potential legal challenge or by the developer, or at a minimum, we would need to return to the planning board to get amended approval for the project. But it would certainly delay their project and put them in a tough spot.
Okay, so the option would then be to move it back to the planning board? What would that accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would depend, respectfully, Your Honor, on why the council is choosing to reject the agreement. I guess that would be my question. And then I could recommend a path forward.
Councilor Tabor?
Help me understand then, in the covenant language, section 1, affordable means that the rent or sales shall be affordable to a qualifying tenant or buyer. Rent for any unit shall be set at the 100% rent limit for a 3-person household, determined on a per-bedroom basis as established by the Portsmouth Rochester HUD Metropolitan Fair Market Rent Areas as published annually by HUD. For sale housing is any unit that's affordable to a household of 4 earning up to 100% of the area median. So the first part of that covenant seems to refer to apartment rentals.
Well, again, that's referring to rentals of the units. A condo owner could rent out their unit to someone, certainly. Become a landlord of one of the units.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear that because of market conditions where the developer is not moving towards apartments as opposed to condos.
No, and just to highlight that would not be in conformance with their site plan approval, and if they were to do that, they may be able to, but they would need to return to the planning board for amended site plan review, or site plan approval and amended conditional use permit.
That's very helpful. That enables me to vote for this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councilor Moreau?
I'd like to make a motion that we move to authorize the city manager to accept and record a community space easement and a workforce housing covenant in substantially similar form to the easement deeds from 2422 Lafayette Road Associates LLC contained in the agenda packet, subject to my corrections.
Second.
Councilor Bagley.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor, and hopefully this will be my last bite of the apple. I do want to put out there that, once again, we only have the carrot when it comes to affordable housing and large developments, because Concord, despite taking up a bill for the last, I think, going on 15 or 20 years, has never passed an RSA that would allow the city of Portsmouth to require a proportion of affordable housing units in a large development such as this. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've only had two, this being the second one, the first one being West End Yards. So I would hate for this council to put any doubt in developers' minds that we would not be supportive of a project that included affordable housing, because I would worry that we would scare away people from, going down this path.
Councilor Bagley, I appreciate that. I have the issue that I have is with the definition of affordable. If it's 100% of the AMI, it's hard to imagine that it would be considered affordable. It's literally what 100% of the average median income is. And the average median income, Portsmouth, is pretty high. It's a larger subset of that. So the idea that Concord needs to solve our problems in this case, while I am quick to point that argument out on many occasions, here's an occasion where we had the opportunity to limit to 60%. Granted, the building might not have happened, and that's the risk that we run. But I think that more people in Portsmouth want to see us hold the line on 60% and say, come hell or high water, you're not building unless it's affordable for a significant amount of individuals at a significantly lower price. I don't think that there's an enormous amount of pushback for us to say no to a development if it's not going to have that, and certainly not have the definition of affordable. I balance that versus the quite literal fact that we are, having to, take a bite of this apple that is, it's already baked. The idea that we have a policy, and I would suggest to the Land Use Board that we get on our horse and ride about removing the 100% AMI or up to reducing and removing the community space option, as we've stated that we are, and have that as a zoning ordinance, within on our dais the next couple of months, so that we can prevent this from future councils from being able to be put in the same position of having to call 100% AMI an affordable unit and to go to a ribbon cutting and all clap that we're doing a lot, and we're doing more than a little, but it's not enough. And that's the frustration that I think the assistant mayor and I share when it comes to this project in particular. Councilor Bagley.
Sorry, Your Honor, I do have, maybe refute's not the right word, but I do have some data that may kind of help explain why 100% is not such a bad thing. Recently, the median home value by state, New Hampshire came in number 10 at $421,000. Strangely enough, my wife and I bought our house in 2019 for $421,000. That house today is worth like $675,000. We could not afford to buy a house in this community today, 3 years later, because the median house in the United States has gone up 45%. The vast majority of the people that live in our community today, who 100% AMI and could afford to buy a house in 2019, would not be able to do so today because of the drastic increases in housing costs. So I think the AMI, the average income in Portsmouth is nowhere near high enough to buy property in Portsmouth because of this drastic change. So I do think it's quite nuanced. I don't have any good solutions, but I don't think this is a standard situation since the pandemic. Housing prices increasing close to 50% over 3 years has kind of thrown everything out of alignment to traditional scenarios.
I would agree. Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that it's troubling to see workforce housing, it being called workforce at 100%. But at the same time, this is our current zoning ordinance, and this is a project that's already gone through our planning boards under our current zoning ordinance. So revisiting it at this point, and that agreement at this point, is not really the legal purview of the council. I do believe the remedy is in a second motion tonight, after we finish with this motion, to request that the Land Use Board revisit our policy and our ordinance in this case. And I think it would be absolutely reasonable for this council to make that second motion tonight, asking the Land Use Board to consider that. It's happened frequently with the Governance Committee that we've ended up with a resolution or something referred to us afterwards to think about a policy because the council wasn't happy with the policy that came before us and what we had to deal with. And in this case, I think legally we're not in a good position to reject this, but we are in a great position to refer action to the Land Use Boards for recommendation to the council.
Legal question for Attorney McCourt. How would it go if we were to suggest a motion after this, assume this passes, I think it has the votes to pass, assume that we would make a motion to request back a ordinance change removing community space as an accepted trade-off and limiting 60 units to be at 60% of AMI or somewhere in that. If a project happened, was put before the city tomorrow, and we have stated this opinion tonight to begin this process of changing the ordinance, would that be subject to that, or only when we have signed the ink on that?
Your Honor, I believe that what the case law says is it has to be noticed. I'll look to the city attorney for maybe a little assistance here, but I believe that it has to be noticed for first reading in order for that to be binding on the next development coming down the road.
Councilor Moreau might have the answer to that question.
He is correct. But developers, as soon as they do design review and have a public hearing in front of the planning board, vest in our ordinance. So it doesn't matter what we do after that. So just so you know, and they're usually coming to us a year before we actually see site plan with consultation and design review. So, and design review isn't we're reviewing design. It's a term of art from our ordinance and our statutes in the state. But that allows them to vest because we have an initial view of the project and an initial public hearing on the project. So even if you were to change something and we were able to actually get it here in a reasonable amount of time, it would still, any project that's in process right now could come to planning board and have a public hearing and vest before that happens. It's just to guarantee for projects so that they know what zoning they're going to be under as they go through the process. That is why it was put in there. But I'd also like to add that I did actually ask the question at planning board when this was before us, before me as a planning board member. I actually asked the attorney at this time, if this project was built at that day, what the actual sale amount would be of the units, and it was a little over $400,000. And that blew me away, that's where our median income is, that's where the levels are. So yeah, since then values have gotten even worse. But if our median income hasn't changed a lot, that means that sale value was probably in a similar price range. I'd also like to state that land use is already looking at incentives. We already have started that process. We're actually working on a plan for community engagement around incentives now. So you can order us to just change it and bring it back, or you can let us go through the process of making sure that we really evaluate all incentives across the board in our zoning that have to do with community space, workforce housing, with that lens of trying to produce more housing. It's up to you guys. Land use is here to advise you, and we can go through it quickly, we can go through it methodically, we can pull something out if you want us to, but at this moment, that is what Phase 3 is all about, and that has already begun.
Well, I would say we should pull the things out and start adding it back in a more thoughtful way. But some of the things that we've seen not to work, like the community space and the vote that's given this consternation in terms of 100% of AMI, I would like to see us pull them out and then look at a longer process of what we can add back in. But that's probably a conversation for another day, and happy to hear that it's already being worked on. Attorney McCourt, do you have, or maybe Councilor Moreau, the average size of units in here?
I do.
Yeah, there's multiple different sizes.
I don't. But I read it earlier today.
There is a percentage of, I think, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, if I remember correctly. There is a variation, but there's multiple different sizes. They're not all the same size units.
You know the total numbers of units?
95?
95.
total
95.
units.
How many units are?
20%.
20%, and they're to be evenly distributed among throughout the property and among the unit sizes.
18 properties that are
Condo sizes.
at 100%, and then of those, let's see, there's studios or 1 bedroom.
Has to be a mix.
1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom.
Yep.
Okay, so 6 of each, or potentially less if there's
It's
a.
reflective of the overall spread of
Percentage.
units in the
Square
whole
footage of the
development.
property.
Okay, so let's assume for 5 3-bedroom apartments at 100% of AMI means, 5 more families can stay here than would otherwise. And somebody would qualify for this if they were, let's say, firefighter and a teacher were both on the starting out, not to exceed $100,000 would qualify on first year salaries, unknown if it would be by 5th year salary, but okay. I think that there's, at least from my perspective, a very tangible feeling about something that was approved in policy that was a 2019 policy before a pandemic, before we saw as much influx in the amount of units that were coming in. And we bristle, or at least I bristle, System Mayor mentioned that I think we all have a problem with the terminology of 100%. But given the fact that this is a policy was approved by the planning board, and our process here is more or less to deliver the seal of the city to a land use board's decision, I don't feel as though I can vote against this covenant or granting this covenant due to the fact that it is not my legal responsibility to do so, although morally it does not feel as good now. No shade on Councilor Moreau, because I do remember those conversations, and I remember believing the powers that be in terms of developers in the conversation. I think Portsmouth has changed a lot, and the other 80% are going to gather more and make up for it than they would have otherwise, and would love to be able to revisit this, but are under no obligation to, at least the developers I know they're no obligation to. So with that, I will ask for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah, opposed.
Next up.
Great, thank you. Next is the request for an acceptance of an easement for 201 Kearsarge Way. Essentially, this is expanding that access agreement as they expand the driveway and turning one lot into 3 lots, all that have access to a current existing public way known as Birch Street. What this will do is it'll help the city's ability to maintain it as access on an existing public way.
I await a motion to authorize the city manager to accept and record an access easement in substantial similar form to the easement deed from Richard Fusini contained in the agenda packet.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. Last for the Assistant City Attorney McCourt is acceptance of easements and license at 444 Borthwick Ave. And this relates to the new satellite parking to be constructed by Portsmouth Regional Hospital. So this first easement speaks to a new drainage structure coming from Borthwick Ave. This will essentially help the city deal with a city drainage need from a public way. It's important to note that the hospital has already complied with their own on-site drainage requirements. So that is request number 1. And number 2 speaks to the license agreement would be expansion of an existing sidewalk, which would make this easier to maintain. And the hospital has been very cooperative to work with. And both the deed and the draft license agreement are in the packet.
I would wait a sample motion to authorize the city manager to accept and record a stormwater easement and grant a sidewalk maintenance license in substantial similar form to the easement deed form and the license agreement to HCA Realty Incorporated contained in the agenda packet.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, and thank you, Trevor. Item 8, and the last city manager action item, is finalization of easements and a license amendment for West End Yards. This is a complicated one, and Assistant City Attorney Jane Farini's here, along with attorney for the developer, John Bozen. This project is very close to completion, and in the final review, staff discovered internal easements between the parcels within the development, and these easements need to be approved by council. It also finalizes community space easement and releases sewer infrastructure, which we do not need. So there's a lot to read here. The last thing I should point out is there's an amendment to a landscape agreement, which holds the developer to landscape commitments along Hodgson Way and Kate Street. So to summarize, there's a sightline easement. There are 2 community space easements, a release of sewer infrastructure, an amendment to the landscape license. And if there are any specific questions, Jane is mercifully here to help me.
Any questions? Councilor Moreau.
I guess I just have a little bit of confusion as to who is truly going to be responsible. Is it going for the greenway along Hodgson's? Because I know part of that really went with like the townhouse portion, which I believe got sold off. And so if you could just dive into that a little bit further.
So in May of 2020, when the first packet of all these easements came before the council, the Hodgson Way portion of the greenway was clearly established in the landscape agreement. Once we were reviewing the finalization of this project, obviously the Kate Street extension hadn't been constructed. So what this amendment is doing is attaching that responsibility to Kate Street Development LLC, who is represented by Attorney Boson, who is here this evening as well. So they'll be responsible for both strips, even though Kate Street LLC is the owner of the parcel that's sort of abuts the second portion of the greenway that connects to Bartlett. But it will be Kate Street Development LLC, the original applicant, the original owner of parcels A and B, will be responsible for that lower strip.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just on that topic, what does that responsibility include?
To install and maintain the landscaping along both Hodgson Way and Kate Street. There's some little trees. It's a very small strip of land. If you
Okay.
drive by, you'll see there are some trees in order to maintain those, that landscaping.
Okay, typically, has the city ever required, so we don't put, as I've learned, trash cans outside of the downtown, or that's limited there, as that becomes more walking? Just imagining if there was litter strewn about there, would that be the responsibility of the Kate Street if litter was strewn, or would it be a city responsibility in terms of not installing a trash receptacle?
It's on the other side of Hodgson, so it's not the
Not the
side
walk.
abutting the, yeah. So
Okay,
there's
not
the
on the brook,
greenway's
I
on the
see.
outer rim
Okay.
of Hodgson Way. So I don't think the landscape agreement specifically addresses litter and certainly doesn't address trash receptacles. But I know that Public Works, reaches out to folks that have the obligations to maintain our license area in a good, neat, and clean condition.
Okay. Councilor Bagley?
Thank you, Aaron. I was actually going to have a similar question. So the easement is the side where the bike multi-use path is?
Yes, it's on the other side.
And we have had requests in the past that, they would like a trash can out there. One of the reasons I believe we don't do trash cans outside of the downtown is, one, those trash cans are paid for with parking revenue, and there's no parking revenue that comes from this section of the city. And two, if you have a trash can, it actually invites more debris. So if it's not regularly emptied, the trash can overflows and it makes the problem actually worse. That being said, is it possible to ask them to at least look into providing a trash can in a regular trash service if they already have one for the development? Or is that kind of outside the scope of this?
I think it's outside the scope of the landscape agreement, but because Attorney John Boson is right here listening to that question, we can certainly relay the request.
Any other questions? All the covenants for workforce housing were already established.
Years ago, yeah, recorded in the registry, yes.
Question, why would never mind. Okay, any other questions from the council? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane. All right, we are on to the consent agenda. I'd wait a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'd wait a motion to accept email correspondence and place on file.
So moved. Second.
You have a quick comment on this one?
Certainly.
There was one email going through these that I found from my 8th grade student who was asking for our municipal complex's electricity rates. So I reached out to the city. I know that the DPW staff is working on getting those figures. Turns out I was too slow, and I know their homework is actually due tomorrow, but they'll still gladly use any information. I know that the teacher, Chris Rose, said he'll give the students some more time when we do get them that information. I also want to read something which he wrote on why they're working on this project. I don't know if everyone recalls last year, some of them were sent to the city council for review. I know that's the goal as well this year, but I think it's worthwhile noting that he did write, I will absolutely forward some of the best, most realistic proposals to the city council this year. One of the biggest concerns that our students have shared during our climate change unit is that it does not appear that Portsmouth is making a large enough investment in renewable energy to lessen New Hampshire's use of fossil fuels for our electricity needs. That is why the focus this year was on city-owned properties that could potentially benefit for large-scale solar arrays. Mentioned Stover, and thanks us again. So, kudos to the teachers who are teaching students about climate change. I know they're very concerned about it, and I know the city is making strides from where we were when it comes to things like this. And the Climate Action Plan, which we hope to implement this year, will address some of those concerns, and there's actually a role for those students when it comes to input in the Climate Action Plan. So with all that said, thank you. I saw Peter Rice was going to come down, but thank you for being able to share that information with the students when you have it. Likewise, thank you to our teachers who are actually helping the students do what they can to address this issue.
Councillor Denton. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next up, a letter from Maggie Walsh, YMCA of the Seacoast, requesting permission to hold 5K fun run on Saturday, June 24th. I'd wait a motion to refer to the city manager with authority to act.
So moved.
Second.
Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to clarify for those at home who know that I'm on the YMCA board that this is not the YMCA of which I'm on the board. The YMCA of the Seacoast is affiliated with Granite YMCA. I'm actually on the board for the Southern District YMCA. They are not affiliated at all. So I will be able to vote on this.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, on to the council agenda. Appointments to be voted. Ernest Carrier, appointment as an alternate to the planning board. Daniel Main, reappointment to the Portsmouth Housing Authority. Jacqueline Callie Pitts, reappointment to the rec board. Richard Duddy, reappointment to the rec board. Lauren Kranz, reappointment to the rec board. Jessica Blasco, appointment to the Blue Ribbon Sustainability Committee. John Patrick Carty, appointment to the Blue Ribbon Sustainability Committee. Jeffrey Mattson, appointment as a regular member to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. ML Geffert, appointment as an alternate to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Jody Record, appointment as an alternate to the Zoning Board of Adjustment. I'd wait a motion to approve the nominations.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Bagley.
Your Honor, I think, you've brought forward a lot of appointments to be voted tonight and all throughout the council term, and it being National Volunteer Month, I think it's appropriate just to highlight all of these citizens who are appointed by the mayor, give a lot of their free time as volunteers to the betterment of our city. And I want to thank all of the people that have put themselves forward to donate their time.
Thank you, Councillor Bagley. We will hopefully rekindle a initiative in the fall of a recognition event for the members that have served and who no longer serve. And I will make one call out here. And I see Councillor Mbardi, who served many years on the HDC. Not quite as many as Jackie Callie Pitts, who will be entering her 40th year on the rec board, which is
Longer than I've been alive.
it's crazy. It's a long time, and so appreciate her service and the service of all that stepped up to serve. Councilor Brady or Councilor Playlock.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was going to reaffirm Councilor Bagley's statement that it is Frontier, and a lot of these names I've known that have been volunteering since I was a very young child. So I think it's very appropriate, and I'm excited that they're still willing to volunteer and give back to the city. But there's a lot of this. This is quite a list of names here that we have, so I thought it was very appropriate that it is Volunteer Month.
It is the city works because people are willing to work for it, and that's it's an awesome responsibility to be able to move these names forward as a council and to thank them for the work that they will do. Councilor Mbardi.
I'd just like to say that I think the last time we had a recognition event was under Mayor Blaylock, and I was part of that, and it really meant a lot to me, and so I really am excited that we are planning to do that again.
I think, there's some, COVID changed a lot in terms of things where we had the habit of doing, and then that habit breaks, and it was, when we had, it was Volunteer Month, and a member of the public, after one of the proclamations said you should have a volunteer, and I thought we should, and it turns out it was this month, and so it was really close by, and I was talking with Joanna, and she stated, Joanna Deemer, that there used to be this event, and that, if we want, we can get that event going again, and that is, I think, a fantastic idea for not only us to recognize the boards and commissioners, but for those boards and commissions that don't get to talk too much, get to see, all of the folks that are serving alongside them on alternative boards. So,
I would like to add that it's a long event, because there are a lot of people who donate their time to this city.
It is. Clear the calendar, guys. It's a few, it will be a few. All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Councilor Tabor.
Thanks, Your Honor. We have a new community engagement and communications officer for the city, Monty Bohannon, and I swarmed him. And this motion was originally more action-oriented. I was thinking we could form a Blue Ribbon Committee, and the city manager said, let's play the long game here and do this one step at a time, and start with an update. And now that Monty is here, and now that we've also deployed Flash Vote, as many people have seen out, and get an update from him and some thoughts from him on where we can go with community engagement. As I mentioned in my material in the packet, it's really a goal of our council, one that I'm really fond of, and would like to see us continue making progress. So the motion is to request an update on the public engagement report of July 22nd, 2022. Get a second, I'll just add a few more things.
Second.
I gave some, a little bit of narrative examples of where surveys and community engagement have really helped us this year, like outdoor dining and the neighborhood parking programs, and some past examples of where study circles have helped the city, like the middle school renovate or relocate dialogue and the 2015 master plan. So I was hoping that we could touch on those when we get the update, or opportunities for those. And I also hope we can talk about Sherburne and affordable housing in that neighborhood. And I heard a variety of voices, not just one type of voice from that neighborhood. I heard a number of opinions, and I think it would be beneficial if, as the work from the Land Use Board comes to fruition, maybe to have some kind of dialogue with that neighborhood, where they could talk about the values and priorities for affordable housing in their neighborhood in the context of how acute a problem it is for the whole city, so that they could have dialogue amongst themselves in small groups and recommend their priorities and their values to us. So that was another reason that I was keen to get a look at the whole 360-degree range of options for community engagement. So that will tee up, I hope, what we can talk about when that report's ready, and put it to a vote.
Thank you, Councilor Tabor. Councilor Morrell.
I'd just like to ask that part of that report addresses some of the concerns that were brought up during public comment regarding verifying of residents when you're looking at Flash Vote, or who's going to use it and how do we prevent from it being abused, and if that can be part of that report so that we make sure we're addressing security concerns as well.
Yeah, and I think it's very easy to do that, but let's do that too.
Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, Councilor Tabor, for starting this initiative. We had a soft rollout, I believe, on Friday on YouTube, and I saw it and I got excited and I posted it a little bit ahead of today's firm rollout. But I've kind of taken a deep dive into it. We've, at the start of this conversation, we had 189 members. We're now up to 190 members. If you look at the frequently asked questions, it makes sure that you can't vote stack. It has where you live by zip code and everything. Your name is listed, but the city sees no other details, and you can change your nickname to be something other than your name. And the best part is there's kind of like a default survey that everybody that joins Flash Vote takes. And if you go to that citizen satisfaction survey, every community in the country has responded, so that's not really useful. But you can go in the search bar, and you can limit it to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and it shows you the answers for question 1, which we've had 143 responses, the answers for question 2, which we've had 142 responses, and then it does something really cool. On question 3, it was put your comments in on what local issues, if any, would you like Flash Vote to collect citizen input for your local government. And it does a word map where if people put in that issue a lot, the word is bigger, and the biggest word on it is housing, and the second biggest word is affordable, and then there's tons of other words in there. But it's a really interactive way for citizens, one, to get engaged with the government with a short investment of time, and it's super transparent because everybody gets to see the results, and they're broken down graphically in a very easy to understand manner. So I just really want to applaud Councilor Tabor for bringing this forward, because I think it's going to be an amazing tool for getting citizen engagement.
Yeah, I look forward to using it, and everybody who signs up and uses it gets the results in 48 hours. It's totally transparent. I think the other benefit of it is, and I'm talking past the point of close here, but the other benefit is that when we do surveys and we announce a survey about a particular issue, everybody who's active in that issue can email their friends and say, pump your data into this survey. This is a panel that is made up to be representative of the community. So, I think the best opinion research is not the people who just volunteer to sign up. It's a balanced survey of a cross-cut of the whole community by age, by income, by kids or no kids. I think that's how we get a more representative response.
Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to again thank Councilor Tabor for suggesting that we look at Flash Vote, and for the city in following through and setting this up for us, and getting us started at this point in a way of collecting more diverse data for the city. In the past, it's been very difficult to know where all the different citizens stand, and this does provide us an opportunity to do a general kind of polling kind of question for any issue for a wide range of residents. But the only way that happens is if people sign up. And so I want to encourage our residents to please sign up for Flash Vote. And any concerns that were expressed this evening, I think, have been very well addressed by Councilor Tabor and Councilor Bagley before me. I want to assure all the residents at home that this is just another tool for the council to use to collect opinions from the public. The council still makes the decision, so the tool's not making decisions for us, but it provides us with a little bit more data, so it's much easier to make an informed decision.
Thank you, Councilor Cook. Certainly echo that statement, just as public comment is a portion of that, and we've extended public comment to Zoom to make it easier. Flash Vote extends our information collecting to folks that might not always pay attention to their government, because your government still pays attention to you in that sense, and would love for this, if nothing more, to be informational about what are the questions that the City Council is looking to answer. So thank you, Councilor Tabor. Thank you for the report back that we'll receive from Monte, provided this vote passes. And now I'm talking past the close. Was that, or you just didn't?
I was agreeing.
This is Mayor was just telling me that I was going on. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilor Bagley.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just get to the agenda. Parking Traffic Safety Committee action sheets and minutes of March 15th, 2023 meeting. I move to approve and accept the action sheet and minutes of the March 15th, 2023 Parking Traffic Safety Committee meeting.
Second.
And I will speak very briefly to it. I don't think there's anything too controversial on there. However, I do want to acknowledge the work of two of the members, Steve Pesci, Erica Wygonic, as well as City Engineer Eric Eby and Associate Engineer Tyler Reese. For around 2 years, they've been working on a speed limit, comprehensive review of the speed limits in the entire city. And they've found a number of areas where our ordinances don't match the signs. They've also addressed what we'd like speed limits to be versus what they actually are, and what we can do through short-term and long-term measures to bring those speed limits down to a safer rate of speed, because overwhelmingly the request we receive at PTS is to slow traffic, not make it faster. It's a very comprehensive presentation. I believe it's on the city website, but if not, it will be there soon. And if you look at that meeting, you can see the probably half-hour presentation that they gave. But it really gets into the nitty-gritty of why we set speed limits the way we do, and why speed limits are not really that great at controlling speed. It's really how the driver feels that creates the speeds that they're going. But it's going to give the city a great roadmap to move forward with hopefully controlling speeds to a safer rate. And just a tremendous amount of work was put in by those individuals to the benefit of our city.
Thank you, Councilor Bagley. Any other questions or any questions on that? Appreciate the work you do on the committee. It is often one of the toughest assignments that we have as a council is how people feel with regard to the safety. Throwing parking there, that's not an easy one. So appreciate the work that you do, and for the conversations that you facilitate as chair. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next up, Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight, the City Council was to consider the donation policy, city donation policy brought forward by the Governance Committee. But unfortunately, after the agenda was already published, we had some last-minute concerns from a few parts of the city that want to go back and look at this one more time to make sure it works with their policy. So instead of moving to adopt the policy as presented this evening, if the council will indulge me, I want to move to postpone consideration until the May 1st City Council meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? At 10 o'clock, I'm fine to push anything off until next week, or next 2 weeks. Thank you, Councilor Cook, for the work that has gone into this, and for seeing it as an area of improvement. Next up, approvals of grants and donations. C, bigger one, acceptance of state aid grant award, SAG, for Pierce Island wastewater treatment upgrade. To wait a motion to approve and accept the state aid grant in the amount of $35,031,456 payable over 30 years pursuant to the amortization schedule.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions? I guess I have one, and it was somewhat brought up. This is different from the sewer rates are an enterprise fund, so you pay based on the usage, and the calculation of this was based on that. So when we moved out the expansion of Pease, it wasn't like we were saving money because we weren't spending that money and weren't going to amortize that or use that as an enterprise fund. This is a little different because of the fact that this offers this at a lower rate, I would imagine, from a debt service limit. But can anybody yet in the city explain how much lower or what we should expect in terms of rates?
Your Honor, I'll take a stab, and if there are further questions, Peter Rice is here as well. But it came up in public comment that what does this do to the overall financial picture? We would be using net position to reduce the increases to ratepayers, so this grant will help lessen that need to dip into net position and will help to maintain a reasonable increase to ratepayers over time. So it softens the glide path, if that helps you, extends and softens that glide path.
And when will we be discussing this in more depth? It's part of the budget process that's upcoming or current.
Peter has gotten
Peter's-
closer
he's-
to the mic, so if it's okay with the council, I'd like Peter to weigh in.
He must have already prepared his comments.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. Peter Rice, Director of Public Works. We would be discussing it during our budget work sessions with you all. However, the manager is correct in that it will help reduce the increase of rates. It's important to realize that this isn't a lump sum cash payment. This is a kind of reverse mortgage almost, where they give us a portion of the principal and a portion of the interest to offset the overall cost of the treatment plant. Make no bones about it, it is a really great thing for us. We were looking at, give you a sneak peek, we were originally looking at over 6%, but now we're looking at significantly less, closer to 4, which is 4.5. So it's a big deal, and it allows us to be able to look at significant projects that are coming at us in the next few years and not be really worried about them. So it's a very positive thing for the Sewer Enterprise Fund.
Thank you, Peter, and for you gave a tell. I guess when he's excited and it's good news, he comes down to the mic faster.
I don't have to think about what I'm saying as much. I probably should.
I will thank you for the explanation and for the work to get this state aid grant. The ratepayers will thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up, acceptance of 2023 Local Source Water Protection Program grant. Sample motion, I would wait a motion to authorize the city manager to enter into a grant agreement with the State of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services to accept up to $25,000 from the New Hampshire DES Local Source Water Protection Program to assist with the purchase of a conservation easement on a parcel adjacent to the Bellamy Reservoir.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This is an approval of donation from Piscataqua Savings Bank for lunch as a part of Student Government Day. I'd wait a motion to accept the donation for Student Government Day for student, staff, and city council members participating not to exceed $1,000.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Acceptance of Invest New Hampshire Municipal Demolition Grant Program in the amount of $125,600. I'd wait a motion to approve and accept the grant as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we had our McIntyre update. There's a rail car safety update. I know that Council Morrell caught me in the break to ask me if we could have an update on this.
I was hoping that maybe we could request at one of our upcoming meetings for either a report back verbally or written from our first responders regarding what the current plan is, so we can make sure that we get that out to our residents so that they thoroughly understand. I know we've had questions about why we can't know what's in the train cars, so it'd just be nice to try to explain to everyone all at one place that, if you have questions about this is our plan, these are, we can't know these things because of the laws it's under. It'd just be nice if we put that all in a report and put that out for the residents.
We could do that.
Thank you.
And I know there is heightened awareness, certainly with what's happened in Ohio, and the statistics speak for themselves. Difficult to get sometimes information because there's not a whole lot that rail operators and companies and railroads have to tell municipalities. They did offer when asked myself what the speed limit was in Ohio versus Portsmouth, and it was 40 miles an hour in Ohio versus 10 miles an hour. And so having as much information as possible on that would be useful. And I know that that's always been somewhat of a challenge that's made situations that are stressful a little more stressful because of the way that we get to operate in terms of information sharing there. But will be a good opportunity, and we will have something. Next we should, I always feel like we should put this under my name. It's one of my favorite days. We celebrate it as a city holiday in the McEachern family, and that is Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day. The boys and gals at the DPW do a fantastic job. It's sometimes really hot, but getting these chemicals so you don't pour them down a sink or put them, in a place that they're going to affect the bay. They're down in your basement. Get in line. They're going to pass out information on all the things that the City of Portsmouth does in terms of protect water source, and you get to see the inside of DPW and how it works. Remember, no latex paint. That's got to be dried out with kitty litter and disposed of in a trash can. But this is a good day and speaks to all the hard work DPW does. Councilor Cook.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day is a wonderful day as well. I was hoping just to ask the city manager if it's possible for the city to just investigate possibilities around latex, other options around latex paint disposal, again, to see if there are any better options. I think it can be a bit challenging for residents to dry out all their paint, especially if they have a considerable amount of paint. And I would hate for anyone to make a decision to pour it potentially down the sink rather than to dry it out.
Councilor Morrow.
Just because I've had this experience, we bought a house back in 2002 that had a lot of leftover old paint, and you can actually buy hardener for them that you can put in, and you leave them open, and they harden in a couple of days to throw out. So there are things out there that you can do.
Speedy dry?
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. It was so many years ago, but we had to get rid of a lot of paint.
Or kitty
All right. I'm glad we share the enthusiasm in Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day. And what's the date again?
Saturday, April 29th.
29th. Mark your calendars. 29th. Request for work session regarding the indoor sports complex ice rink.
Right. I'll be quick with this, Mayor. There was, as you all recall, on March 6th, we had the presentation of the rec need study. And following that presentation, the council voted to schedule a work session. And the best way we think to hold an informed work session would be to proceed first with an RFQ process, which would identify a firm or firms interested in developing such a complex within the city or within the adjacent communities served by our school district. And then through that process, we would work with the appropriate firm to understand what we could bring to bear to that work session. And contemporaneous with all this, we have embarked upon a survey that is comprehensive of the community campus parcel, because there's been a lot of discussion about what can take place there. So it would be appropriate for us to all have a handle on what can and cannot be accommodated there. So those two will come together through this process, and as soon as we work with and decide upon a firm, we will be back to schedule the work session.
City Manager, Councilor Blaylock.
Thank you, Your Honor. And thank you, City Manager. I know there's a lot of people on the rec board and the community, they're excited. This process is still continuing to move forward. And I think this, we'll take your advice, and but I think this is continuing to move the project forward. So I don't want people to get frustrated because this will ensure that it actually, the best way forward will happen.
Right, and I think there's a recommendation to have a joint work session with the rec board and the council.
Excellent.
When we're ready to do so.
Thank you.
Anything else under miscellaneous? Oh, Councilor Moreau.
I just wanted to mention, since it's on my calendar for tomorrow, the first Tuesday of every month for the remainder of the summer is a community meeting at the Levinson Room for the air show. So anyone in the community that might be interested in knowing what's going to be happening at the air show, they do monthly updates at 4 p.m. the first Tuesday. So tomorrow at 4 p.m. you will find me at the Levinson Room, and I hope other people will be able to join us there. And you'll be able to get right from the people that are arranging the air show what is going to be happening. If you have questions or concerns or whatnot, then you are welcome to attend.
I like the optimism for the rest of summer.
You know, until it happens.
Assistant Mayor? Councilor Bagley?
Thank you, Your Honor. And this item will probably not be of interest to anyone except for myself, but my mom played for UConn basketball in the 1960s, and as a result, I grew up a diehard UConn basketball fan of both the men and the women. And the men are currently playing in the national championship game, and as soon as the meeting is over, I'm going to go watch the rest of it, and I hope they win.
Councilor Bagley? Councilor Blaylock?
I'd just like to say today Portsmouth Little League started, and games start in 2 weeks, so I hope everyone, when you see the kids playing on the local fields, go give their support. But it's a great part of our community.
I have a quick update, Your Honor. At the next meeting, which is April 17th, there will be Student Government Day preview where the counterparts to everyone on the dais and several department heads will be present, sitting with you all up on the dais. We will switch out our very comfy chairs for the smaller chairs so as to accommodate all these wonderful people. And just want to give that update. We have lots of interest. We have about 24 kids who would like to participate.
Looking forward to it. Councilor Tabor, that sparked another miscellaneous here. We just are in the giving mood tonight. Nobody wants to watch Councilor Bagley's Yukon.
We're keeping him from the game. Timeline for Community Power. April 11th will be our 45 days that our aggregation plan's been in front of the PUC, so we hope to hear back on the 11th or 12th. The city manager is authorized to meet with the Community Power Coalition, and that looks like will occur on the 12th or 13th to begin to procure electricity. And then the Community Power Coalition and we, the city, will start to promote and do the public engagement around what's coming, and the notification letters, information letters should, in that scenario, go out as soon as early May. And then we would be going live in June. So that's the timetable at this point.
Thank you, Councilor Tabor. Next person, I would await a moment or a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, Portsmouth.